All right, and welcome to our next project, the Auth workflow one, where we'll learn how to validate emails, create refresh tokens, and set up reset password functionality. Now, in order to keep it as real world as possible, I did create a front end application for you, since that way you'll be able to test all the functionality, not only in the Postman, but also in the browser. Now, just so I can demonstrate how the features eventually are going to look like, I have deployed both the front end of the project on Netlify and backend on Heroku. But since we're going to be using Ethereal for managing emails, you're not going to be able to test it in a live project. Now, what do I mean by that? So this is the URL, correct? Which I'm going to use especially in the beginning to showcase how certain features work. But if you go here and try to implement them yourself, it's not going to work because emails are going to be coming to my Ethereal account. Now, rest assured, once we're done with the project, it's going to be pointing to your Ethereal account, or you can even set it up using SendGrid. Because remember, the only thing you'll need to do is just to change some values around. Now, with that said, our app is going to look something like this, where we have the homepage, and notice I'll right away make the request to show me. And if you remember, in the show me route, we were checking whether the user has logged in. So this is happening by default. The moment we open up the application, browser will make that request, meaning there is a front-end code that is set up to make that request. And then we check. If the user has logged in, beautiful, we'll send back the data. But if the user hasn't logged in, then we're returning 401. And if that is the case, then we are not logged in. And basically, on the front end, we're not displaying the dashboard. So that's the first thing we need to understand. Then we have two options. Either we go to a login or register. Now, since I haven't registered, it would make a little bit more sense if we do that first, correct? So we click over here, and then let me go with my famous John, and the same deal here, and then I want to provide my password. So we go here for register, and this is a request we're making, but notice something interesting. So we are getting back 201, but the message says, success, please check your email to verify account. So what happens, yes, we registered, but we haven't confirmed our email. And what that means, even if the user tries to do this, where they basically go to a login one and say John, Gmail, and these values are correct. Let me just tell you that right off the bat. It's not like I'm providing the wrong values. No, values are correct, but I can see here, please verify your email. So before we do anything, yes, we registered, but we cannot log in. We cannot access this application since we haven't confirmed the email. Now, if I go to, again, my Ethereal account, which eventually is going to be on your account, then I'll see over here that I have email confirmation. I click. Basically, this would be an email that is sent to a client. So if you're going to use SendGrid, then of course it's actually going to send to that email. So I take a look. I have email confirmation, and this is what we're going to send back. We'll say, hello, whatever is the name of the user, please confirm your email by yada, yada, yada. Now I'll open up right away this one in a new tab, or you know what, I'm just going to do it with this one, then we'll go back to Ethereal. But essentially, there's going to be another email. So we click here, and notice, now we navigate to a front end. So this is going to be interesting, where from the email, we'll navigate to the front end, and we'll pass a token. So notice this one here. We have here the token. And again, at the moment, it probably doesn't make sense, but there's going to be a token that we'll use to make a request from the front end. And if everything is correct, then we'll get back account confirm. And if not, then of course there's going to be a error message. Now, since I have confirmed my email, since essentially I've clicked from my email and I've navigated to the front end. The front end sent a request. We double checked whether the token is correct as well as the email. Now I can finally log in. So on front end, we display this. We click on login. And now I can bravely go here with John at Gmail. And then let's go with secret. Let's press and voila. Now I have hello there, John. Then again, normally you're not going to send back the ID, meaning you're not going to display it on the front end, but this is just so you can see what's happening. So role is user as well as the ID, which is whatever random value. And again, in this case, every time we'll refresh the application, we'll still do the same thing where we'll make that 401. Now, in this case, though, what's happening? We're getting back to 100. Why? Well, because when we log in, so not when we register. When we register, we still need to confirm the email. But when we log in, if we take a look at our cookies, voila, I have my refresh token. And then, of course, I have my JWT. And then in this project, actually, there's going to be 2 cookies. There's going to be one for access token and one for refresh token. And I'm not going to dive into that topic right now because we'll cover that in way greater detail once we actually get there. So now, once I have successfully logged in, as long as this refresh token is going to be valid, we will make that request. So the front end will make the request to show me, basically get me the user. If there is a valid cookie, then we're good to go. And then basically we're getting back the user. Now, this is one thing with Heroku that I kind of want to say right off the bat. It puts the applications to sleep. So if the application is not used, then it goes to sleep. So therefore, sometimes connection will take time because Heroku needs to wake up the dyno, and same goes for MERN applications. If you're familiar with MERN, where effectively we combine the React with a Node.js and Express application, it's the same deal. You can host it on Heroku as a separate project, but yes, that's one of those annoying things. It's a free service for the most part, unless you go over the limit, but it will take some time. I know this is kind of a side note, but I want you to understand that. Regardless, now, like I said, we have 2 of those tokens. We have access one and we have the refresh one. And actually, if we refresh, we'll notice that access one goes away because that one is set up to have a way shorter expiration. Again, something we'll cover later. And the last thing that I want to showcase is, let's say that we log out. We go back to our dashboard. Again, once we'll make the request, you'll notice in network, show me returns 401 because we don't have the cookie. And then let's say I try to log in, but I forgot the password. Notice on the front end, there's an option where we can go to reset password. And in this case, we'll do the same thing. We will send a link in the email. So I just need to provide the correct email. I'm going to go with Gmail here. Then we click on, yep, I want to reset the password. So now we hit different route. We go with forgot password. And the same deal. I need to go to my Ethereal because on the front end it says, hey, please check your email for reset password. So we want the user to check the email and make sure that the user actually clicks on that link, correct? So we click on reset password. I have a new email. And again, this link is back to the front end. And this is why it was so important for me to showcase that front end, because yes, we can technically set up the functionality where we can only test it in a Postman, but it's not going to be a real world scenario. I mean, in most cases, you'll have some kind of front end that deals with those different routes. Again, I know I'm not covering the nitty-gritty yet. Of course, we'll get to that functionality. This is just to give you an overview. So I click here on reset password. And again, we navigate to a front end. We pass in some data using query parameters. And now, once we're here, we just need to provide that new password. And I kind of showcase the password right now, but I'm just telling you that this is going to be a new one. And you can see that it is a longer one. So once I click here, new password, notice success, redirecting to login. And now if we go here, and if I'm going to go with my new one, then you'll see that I am successful. So we log in and we're back to the dashboard. That's the application we're going to be working on. Hopefully everyone will enjoy it, and let's get to work. Beautiful. And as far as the setup, here's what we need to do. Go to the main repo. If you don't see project 11, go back and get it one more time. Again, my apologies, but I am adding this content later. So if you don't see the project, please navigate back. Look for the starter. So in the 11, look for starter. And in there, you'll see two things. You'll see front end and the server. Now, don't worry about the front end right now. We'll get to it eventually. Now, in the server, you'll notice something really interesting. This is the case where we're not going to start everything from scratch. In fact, our project starter is going to be the same exact project we just completed, the e-commerce one. Before we continue, let me explain why. For starters, in my other courses, very often students ask how to combine projects. Basically, how to add certain functionality to a different project. And since I'm suspecting that this is going to be the case here as well, I'll right away show you how we can add all of those features to the existing e-commerce project. Second, when you start working on bigger projects, a lot of times, it's not the separate functionality that's causing the confusion. It's the fact that you have so many moving pieces that you need to think of. But the reality, that is how you're going to be working on in a production application. And even though it is confusing, it might be even scary in the beginning, I want you to practice and get comfortable with having a bunch of files and directories. But with that said, keep in mind that we're really going to work in few places. Effectively, we won't change any product or review setup. They are just to throw you off your game. They're just there to get you comfortable with a larger code base. While working on a project, we will refactor some existing code, but not much. With that said, in order to spin up the project, I want you to navigate to a server and first install all dependencies. But before we can run npm start, let's also set up .env and fix the start command. So I want to go to a server in this case. Again, we have final and starter, and then in the starter we have front end and server. So you want to navigate here, and as I know, I should have put cd, my bad. So cd, we navigate here. Then once we're in a folder, let's start by installing everything. So npm install. Then remember, we used some environment variables in the previous project, correct? So before we can do anything, we'll have to create a .env as well. Now, before we do that, I want to go to package.json, and I'm just going to set it back to a start where I have the node-mon. Now, if you're wondering why I just don't run npm run dev, because I'm pretty comfortable with the start one, and most likely I'll forget, and then I'll run around like a headless chicken, so might as well just do it this way. And then once we actually push it up and all that, then we can change it back. So node-mon and then app.js. Let's save that. And then lastly, like I said, we need to have our .env. So I want to go to a server. Then I'm going to go with .env. And this is the case where literally we can go to a previous project, or you can set it up from the scratch. That's really up to you. But in my case, I already have the commerce one. I'm going to look for final. And here I have my .env. And in that .env, these are the three variables that I need. So let me take everything. Again, we're looking for Mongo URL. We're looking for JWT secret, as well as the lifetime one. So in my case, I'll take all of this. I'll copy and paste. Now I'll have to change some values here around. So for starters, I'm going to go with 11 and then auth workflow. That's going to be my name. Second, in the previous project, I said that before we push this up to production, we'll set it up to a proper JW secret. I didn't do it. My apologies. But we did cover that already before. So if that was the question, you just needed to go back to one of the previous videos. Now, in order to fix that, now I'm going to navigate. Again, the site is all keys generator. Again, there's multiple ways how you can do that. I prefer this side where you're looking for encryption key. More specifically, you're looking for 256. Now, my apologies, my browser today is for some reason kind of on one leg. So I was just showcasing here how we can refresh those values, but effectively I can also grab this one. Just remember, once you click here, it's actually going to be generating that unique key. But again, I don't know why, but today my browser has decided to take a day off. So let me copy and paste. That's going to be my secret. That's my lifetime. Now I changed here. I just need to set up my password. Then I'll save, and then I can go to app.js and run npm start. So let me set up my password, and then we'll run npm start. And once I have .env in place, I'm just going to clear everything. And if everything is correct, we should have server running on port 5000. Now, I strongly suggest not changing the port because you need to keep in mind that eventually we will involve front end as well, the front end application. And in there, we're actually looking for that server 5000. So if you take a look at the source, and then more specifically, package.json, if you watched my cookies gotchas video, which was essentially right after we set up the cookies, where I showcased why we used proxy, you'll notice over here proxy and then 5000. Again, if you didn't, please go back in the previous project. I added a video where I showcased what gotchas we need to be aware of when it comes to a front end and cookies. So in this case, I don't want to repeat myself. I'm just telling you that it's very important for you to have server on 5000 because these ones need to match. Otherwise, you will have to run around like a headless chicken and it's not going to work. With all of this in place, now we can start working on our functionality. Beautiful. And once we have the server running on port 5000, which is necessary for our front-end application, next, we want to start with our functionality. And before we continue, let's just understand what we're trying to achieve. So unlike the Jobs API or our previous e-commerce, when we register, we don't want to send back the token. That's the first thing. We need to understand that if I go here with David, and then that's going to be a david@gmail.com, and we'll set up some kind of password. Once we register, what happens is we create the user, but there's additional step where the user will have to verify the email. So this is where we'll send back the email. And we'll start simply by going back to our user model. And I want to add 3 properties. I want to add verification token property, which is going to be a string. Then we'll add is verified, and that's going to be Boolean. And by default, it's going to be equal to false. And I also want to add verified property, and the type will be date. Now, if one or all of them look kind of funky, don't worry, that's why we are doing everything step by step. Then, in a register controller, since we're not sending back the token, effectively we're sending back the email. And only by clicking on a link, the user then can verify the email. Therefore, we want to remove everything that we currently have after user.create. And before that, before the user.create, we want to set up a fake verification token for now, because in following videos, I'll show you how we can do that using crypto library. But for now, it's just going to be a fake one. And then we want to send back the success message. Basically, yeah, you are successful, just check the email, and that token. So we're not creating cookies, we're not creating JWTs, none of that when it comes to register. So let's start step by step. First, what I want to do is go to my model. I'm looking for the user one. And as I said, I think at this point I can remove the temp one. That's not necessary. We're not going to do any aggregations here. I have user schema, and then anywhere over here, just set up those 3 properties. Again, what we're looking for verification token. So we go here with verification token. And if you want to call this vegan food truck, it's really up to you. It doesn't really matter. It just needs to be a string. That's number one. Then I want to go with is verified, and that will be equal to a Boolean. So we go here with type Boolean, and I want to set it up by default as false. So we go here default, and that is equal to false. So by default, the user is not verified. The user needs to do the verification using the email. And then lastly, I want to set up verified property, which is going to be equal to a date. So we go here with verified, and we'll set it equal to a date. So type will be date. Once we add these three things, now let's navigate to Auth controller. And like I said, when it comes to create token user, when it comes to attach cookies to response and all that, including the status. I mean, technically, you can leave this one because we'll just add modifications, but in my case, I'm just going to start with scratch. I want you to basically take all of this off. Now, we might implement some of it later, but for now, I just want to start with a clean slate where we will remove it. And then remember, now we added this property. We added this verification token. And like I said, in the following videos, I'll show you how we can do that using the crypto library. But in this case, let's just create a fake one. So that's going to be a token that we'll use to verify later once the user is signing in through the front end. And again, I fully understand that the moment it looks kind of funky, don't worry about it. So we're going to go here with Auth controller, correct? And before I create that user, I'll also set up that fake token. So in here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create some kind of variable. In my case, I'll use the same name. So verification and token. And that is equal to a fake token. That's about it. That's how I'm going to save it. So when I'm creating the user, I also want to pass this one in. Why? Well, because I'll set it equal to this, correct? So my verification token will be equal to a fake token. So right after role, we go with verification and token. That's what we're passing in. Now, lastly, like I said, instead of creating the cookies and doing all that stuff, what we want to do is just send back the status. And this is temporary while we're working in the Postman. Normally, like I said, we will send an email. Only in the beginning, since we don't have the front end, I just want to see whether we're getting that token back. And therefore, I'll add here send verification token back only while testing in Postman. That's extremely important. So let me add here, and then let's go with res.status. As far as the status codes are the same. So we go here with created. Then we want to set up the JSON. So we'll say here JSON, and then inside of it, we're going to go with message. That will be equal to the success. So we are successful. We just still need to verify the email. Please check your email to verify the account. Verify account. And then, like I said, temporary will also send back the token. So comma. And then let's send back the token, which is equal to this verification token. So you know what? I can just use the same name, and then it's going to be less typing. And in order to access that, I mean, either I can do it from here or I can get it from user. Let me try getting from user so that way I can see that I definitely have it in there. But again, this is going to be temporary. So we create the user with this verification token. I'm just going to reuse it. I'll say user and then a verification token. And with all of this in place, now what I want to do is go to Postman. And let's first set up everything. And then let's create the user. So I'm going to navigate there. And yes, I'll create a new collection because even though most routes, again, are going to be exactly the same, I don't want to mess the e-commerce one. I think it's going to be more useful if we start technically everything from scratch. Just keep in mind that we're not going to recreate all of these. We're literally talking about the auth and maybe some user ones. So let me go here with a new collection. And I'm going to name it 11 and while developing, I was calling it user, but I think in this case, I'm going to go with auth workflow. As far as the setup, we're going to go here, create a new folder, and surprise, surprise, I'm going to call this auth, and we want to start with register. And again, a bunch of the things are going to be exactly the same. So literally, I can just go here. I can create a new request. It's going to be a post request, correct? So we go here with post. We're looking for the URL. That should be the same. I'm still in dev environment, so I still should have access to a 5000. And then in order to speed this up, let me just take a look. So I have register user. I want to take this. I want to copy and paste in this case. Then I want to also say register user. And as far as the body, raw, we already know the drill, JSON. And then in here, I mean, we're starting from the scratch, so it doesn't really matter. So therefore, I'll take Anna. So come back here, I'll set it up, and I'll send it. And again, the key difference here is that once we register, we're not sending back the cookie with a JWT. What we want to do is we want to verify that email. So let me go back and let me send it. And if everything is correct, this is what we should see. Success. So we are successful, but what we're getting back also is a verification token, which is that fake token. And if I take a look at my database right now, so let me navigate there. And yes, this might be a bit annoying. I at least will remove them just so I can start with a clean slate. I should see the auth workflow. That's a good start. I also should see the users. And notice, so now I have the Anna, I have the email, password. The role is admin because she's the first one. Remember, that was our functionality. And then verification token is that fake token. And as far as verified, well, she's not verified. So next, what we want to do, we want to set up the login where if the user is not verified, well, we're also not sending back the token because otherwise, well, the user can be like, okay, I'm lazy to verify my account. What I'm simply going to do is I'm going to go back to a login and I'll try to trick the system where I'm going to go here with David and then gmail.com. I believe that was the email. And then let me go with my famous password, login, and please verify your email. So that's the next step that we want to take. And once we're done updating the register controller, now we want to work in login controller. Because like I said, we want to restrict access to the token because this is the only place where we're still sending back the token, correct? And pretty much you can think of this as a key to our application. Now, what I want to do is restrict the access though. Right after is password, I want to say, hey, is the user actually verified? If not, then we go back with 401. So try implementing that yourself. I mean, it's going to be extremely similar to is password correct? And then once you're ready, take a look at my solution. So I'm going to navigate to auth controller. I'm again looking for the login because this is the only place where the user can still get the key. And we want to go right after is password correct. So we check that. And now I want to check whether the user is verified. Now, how I can access that? Well, if we remember our database, where was the property? It was right over here, correct? So it's sitting on the user object. And since we know that, now I can just check. I can say if, and then not, user, and then is verified, correct? Because it should be on that user object. So I'm going to go here with verified. And then if it's not the case, what do? Here, we have unauthenticated. We just send that one back. So let's copy and paste. And then once we have everything in place, next we just want to change the message. Where in this case, I'm going to say, please verify your email. So please verify your email. Now, I don't think I'm going to capitalize this one. Let's send that. And now let's take a look what we have in the Postman. So again, this is going to be the case where it's a little bit annoying in the beginning, but don't worry. There's not that many routes that we need to set up. And first, I guess let's try to copy this one. It's still going to be a post route. Now, the difference is going to be the URL. It's going to be a login. And the same deal over here. Let's just say login user. Login user. And then when it comes to a body, I'm going to grab pretty much the same thing. Just too lazy to type them out. So login user body. And then, actually I had it already here. My bad. So we don't need the name. We're just going to go here. We'll save it. We can remove this one. And then once I send, what should be the response? Well, the response should be 401, correct? We send. And yep, we have 401. So now we have successfully restricted the access to our application if the user hasn't verified the email. Now, what's the next step? Well, first we want to create a more serious verification token, because fake token, I mean, it's a nice approach, but it's not going to work in production. That's number one. And number two, we need to start sending those emails, correct? Because user needs to have some kind of way how they can verify the email. Our initial functionality works just fine, but when it comes to verification token, setting it up as fake token in production is kind of silly. What you want is unique token for each user. So user registers, he or she gets that unique token, and then we'll proceed to the next steps. So at the moment, all of them will have this fake token. Now, there's various ways how we can set this up. We can use maybe a unique ID library like UUID and stuff along those lines, but there's also a niftier setup, at least in my opinion, where we can use a crypto library, which is actually built into a node. So we don't need to install anything extra or anything like that. So let's go above where we have right now attach cookies. And right after that, we're going to go with const crypto, and that is equal to require. So let's just require the package, and we're looking for crypto package. So then let's save. Let's keep on scrolling. And what we're looking for is this verification token. And now instead of this fake token, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to remove everything. We're going to go with crypto. So that's what we're getting back from the library. And the method name is random bytes. So essentially, this is going to create a buffer with random bytes. And you can pass here the number. And in my case, I'm going to go with 40. Now, since this is a buffer, I actually want to turn it into a string. And on a buffer, we have this method called toString, which effectively does turn it into a string. And by default, the encoding is going to be UTF-8. But we want to set it up as hex, where effectively each byte is going to be encoded as 2 hexadecimal characters. Now, I understand that this is kind of a lot. At the end of the day, you need to understand we'll just get this random big string value. So let's try to do that. We're going to go with crypto random bytes to string. Let's pass in the hex, and then let's save it. Now again, since we're still testing everything, like I said, just going to be a little bit annoying where we need to go back. At least I'm going to do that. I'm going to remove Anna, and let's try to register one more time, and you'll see how the value actually will be that random bytes one. So let's remove. Now we want to navigate back to our Postman, and instead of register, or I'm sorry, instead of login, we'll go with register again. We send it back, and now check it out. So we have this random bytes value, and this is exactly what we're looking for. We have this random string, which we're going to use in order to verify the email. Wonderful. Once we have everything in place, when it comes to register, when it comes to login, as well as verification token, before we set anything up, before we start sending emails and all that, let me just say that we'll first do everything with a Postman, because I don't want to involve the front end yet. And before we even do that, I want you to understand the main idea, where since we're asking to verify the email, behind the scenes, we're somehow sending that token back to a user, correct? So eventually we'll do that using the email, but for now we'll just do that using the postman. That's why over here we have this token. So in between the login, the successful login, and register, there's this middle step. Effectively, there's that middle route. And the way it looks like, we go over here, we send an email, and as a quick side note, it looks like somebody is using my ethereal values, which again is not a big deal. It's a fake account anyway. So, and here I can see the david@gmail.com. So that's my email confirmation. I click, and then I have a link, correct? Now, what I want to showcase though is the fact that once we go here, we go to our front end and notice the URL. So this is going to be the front end URL, and there are two things passed in here. The token, which is going to be that verification token, as well as the email. And behind the scenes, what's happening on a front end, we read these values. So again, code will be already prepared for you. And front end makes a request. Now, unfortunately, I think it's going to be very hard for me to showcase that. I can only showcase the error one. So let me refresh and notice in this case, there's an error because we already verified the account. That's why we're getting 401. So again, if this is a little bit confusing, don't worry about it. The most important one is this one. So in between the register, where we just register a user and user is still not verified, and login, where the user should be already verified in order to log in, there's this middle step. There's this verify email. So effectively, we need to set up this route. And in there, we're going to be looking for two things. We're going to be looking for verification token as well as the email. And then we'll set up the logic where if the verification token makes sense, then we're good to go. Then the user is verified. Again, we will start with the postman because I don't want to involve the email and the front end yet, but it doesn't change the idea. The idea is with email verification that you need to have this middle step. Not only register or login, but in between them, you have this verify email where you check whether the token that the user is providing, meaning in this case, front end is providing, is correct. And the same goes for email. And this is what we're going to work on in next videos. Wonderful. And once we're done setting up login, now I want to set up that middle point. The one where we verify the email. And then if everything is correct, then we set is verified true, the verification date, and set back the verification token to an empty string. And that way we can go back to a login and start using it. And first, here's what I want you to do. Go to Auth controller and create another one. Create verify email controller. In there, for now, just look for verification token and email in rec.body and send it back. So that way we'll be able to test it in the postman. Then hop over to a auth routes and create a new one. So of course, export the controller and in there import it and set it equal to verify email. And then let's test it in the postman. So first, where's my auth controller? And my apologies, I have plenty of projects open. So let's go here to auth controller and I have register. Okay, awesome. And I'm going to put it in between. So that way we kind of see that it's a middle step. Now you don't have to. You can put it somewhere at the end or on the top. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go here with verify email and it's going to be a sync. It's going to be a rec and res. And like I said, first we'll start by checking for two things. For verification token as well as email in rec.body. Now, eventually, this is going to be sent from our front end. There's going to be a functionality that will send that for us. But as far as the postman, yes, we'll have to manually provide those two things. So let's go here with const and then a verification token. And the reason why I'm using this name is because it's just easier, since that is what we're sending back here, correct? So it's just going to be faster. And I also want to set up the email, and both of those things are going to be in rec.body. And then as far as response, eventually we'll just send back the message, email verified, if everything is correct. But for now, we'll do a long route where we'll go with res.status, status codes, okay, and then JSON. And then inside of the JSON, let's send both of those things back. So that way we know, okay, everything works. Now, if you want, you can log here and send back the message. That's really up to you. In my case, I'll just send it back. Let's scroll down. Remember, we do need to export. So let's go with verify email. Then we'll hop over to where Auth routes, correct? I want to get my verify. So verify email. And since in this case, I was using router.post, I'll just stick to that approach. If you're using router.route, then of course you use that approach. It's irrelevant where you place it over here. So in my case, I'm just going to go with router, then post. So it's going to be a post route. And then I want to go with / and then verify -email. And this is important. Make sure that the name is exact. Whichever setup you prefer, whether you go with router.route and then post, or this one, router post, that's irrelevant. What is important is the verb, so the method we're using, as well as the URL, because frontend is going to be looking for that value. Let's add a comma, and let's go with verify email. And now once everything's in place, like I said, we'll start testing everything in the Postman. So let's navigate there, and then we'll set up a new route. Don't worry, there's not going to be that many routes after this one. So let's go here with add request. It's going to be a post request. We are looking for verify email. So let's go again here with URL, then / we're looking for auth, I believe, correct? And we have verify email. As far as the body, well, let me get back my values, correct? So when I register a new user, in this case, I'm going to go with Peter. And as a side note, yes, for now, we'll have to delete few users. That's unfortunate, but that's what we'll have to do. So that's my verification token. This is what I'll send back. And I also want to go with email. So let me go here. Let me write verify email, and then I'm going to go for raw and JSON, and then let's send back the verification token as well as the email. So in this case, it's this one, correct? So let's go back over here, copy and paste. And like I said, either you can log it and then just send back the message, or notice I nicely get back my verification token, which, like I keep repeating, eventually we will send using the email, and we will send it to this route using the front end. But for now, we're just doing that manually. We have the token as well as the email. So now we just need to set up a verify functionality. Wonderful. So now let's just complete the verification, where effectively the steps are following. We want to check for user using the email. If there is no user, we send back 401. If the token that we're getting does not match to whatever token we have in a user, because remember, that's what we did in register. We did set up that token. Then again, we send back 401. And if everything is correct, here's what we want to do. We want to set is verified. And as a side note, my typing is just awesome, to true. So what that means is that when we'll use login, we'll be successful. We will set up the verified equal to date.now, basically when that happened, and verification token will set back to an empty string. That's why when I was showcasing before the final front end, The second time when we refreshed the page already on the front end, we were getting back the error. And that's the case because at that point, verification token is already an empty string. And then we just want to save it using the instance method. So remember, that was an option that we can take where we use .save on instance. And then as far as the return, we'll go with message and email verified. So let's try this one out. I'm going to navigate back to Auth controller. And since again, this is already our, I believe, 9th project, I'm pretty sure that we can handle if we set up the entire functionality and then we test it. So I'm looking for these two things, verification token and email. And I want to find my user using the email. How can I do that? Well, we can go with const and let's say user is equal to await. And what was the method? Find one. So we're going to go with user find one. And then in here, let's use email. So I want to find a user whose email matches this one. Now, if I'm not successful, if there is no user, what do? We throw 401. So in this case, I'm going to go with throw new, and we're looking for custom error dot, and then unauthenticated, correct? And let's just say verification failed. Awesome. Now I want to check whether the verification token actually matches to what I'm getting here. What is the property name? Well, it is dot and then verification token, correct? Now, if you need, just go and double check in the Mongo one, in the graphical interface, and you'll see that that's the case. So we'll go here with user verification token. If it's not equal to whatever I'm getting here, well, then we have a problem, correct? So we'll go back here, we'll copy and paste, and then we'll send back the same thing. We'll say, hey, check the verification token because there seems to be a problem. Now, if we are good, what that means? Well, that means that we just need to set user equal to verify. So then the user can go back to a login page and actually access the application, correct? How do we do that? Well, we go with user, and first, let's go with is verified is equal to true. Then what I want to do is set verified equal to date.now. So user verified is equal to date.now. And then lastly, let's set up the verification token equal to an empty string. So I'll go here with user and then verification token is equal to an empty string. So the second time, let's say right after, if you make a request, it's not going to work because verification token won't match anymore this one because this one will be already an empty string. Hopefully that makes sense. Then we want to save the user. So go here with await and then user.save. And then lastly, like I said, as far as what we're sending back, we're not going to send back this anymore. We'll just go with message and then email verified. So then the front end just decides what to do, either to guide the user right away to a login page or something along those lines. So now let's hop back to a Postman. And in here, what we're looking for is, of course, a route. So let me send it, and yep, I have email verified. Now what that means is that I can go to login user, and then if I go with Peter, I should get my cookie, correct? So we set it here, and yep, I'm good to go. I have my cookies. I've successfully logged in. And now let's try one more time with brand new user. I mean, I'm having a problem coming up with names, but I will try to go with David. Hopefully I don't have it here. So go with David. We successfully register, but if I'll try to log in, I shouldn't because we haven't verified, correct? So we have here, please verify your email. And now let's do this. Let's go here with David, and register user. I want to take this token instead. So verify email. We're looking for this token. Let's add a comma. Let's verify it. Like I said, the second time we'll send, we'll get verification failed because now our verification token is set to an empty string. But we know initially that it worked, so now I can go to a login one, and voila, I successfully can log in as David. Now, in between the videos, just so you don't have to watch me, I will go and delete all the users so I can start from the scratch, and I highly encourage you to do the same. But with this in place, now we can move on and start finally setting up our emails. Wonderful. So now let's start finally sending those emails. Now, as a side note, my assumption is that you did watch the project 08, send email one. If you didn't, I strongly suggest going back and watch it or rewatch it if you already forgot everything, because I'll try to move somewhat swiftly. So if you're iffy about the initial stuff, let's say how to set up the ethereal and all that, then please go back and watch that project. As always, I can here see a typo. It's actually ethereal like this. So that's the name for the service we're going to use. And effectively, we want to start with Nodemailer. So remember Nodemailer package. I'm going to navigate to their docs. And first thing that we'll need to do is install the package. So let's go back to our project. And we're going to go with npm install Nodemailer. We install the package. All right. Awesome. And then remember, by default, they right away show you how to use ethereal. But during the project, I also showed you how we can do that with a SendGrid. So effectively, what I'm looking for is the user and the password from my ethereal account. So let me navigate there. Now I already have quite a few accounts, but I'll log out, create a new one, and then these are going to be my values. And notice we can nicely right away use them in our Nodemailer setup. So here's what I want to do. I want to go back to my project. First, I'm going to go with npm start. So I want to spin up my server, and then I want to create these following files in the utils. Now, why we have so many? Well, because we'll try to separate some functionality. So we'll have two emails that we'll send, one for send reset password, and then the second one will be for verification email. And then in both of them, we'll try to reuse the code in send email. And then since these configuration values are used pretty much every time, we'll just set it up in a separate file. And you'll see in a process what I mean if any of this is iffy. So we're going to go back right now to the utils. That's our starting point. And let's just create those files. Let's say that I want to create a Nodemailer config.js. For the time being, it's going to be nothing there. Let's go with send email.js. I believe that's the name. Let me double check. Send email and then send reset password. So let's go here, new file. Let's add a JS here. And then the same one will be with send verification email. All of these, we'll set it up over here, JS. And then for the time being, let's just go to send email and back in the Nodemailer docs, let's take some lines of code. So effectively, I want to set up a function that we can invoke just so we can test everything. And then once we can see that our initial functionality works, then we can slowly progress. If you have been taking my courses, you know that it's always my strong suggestion to work in chunks, where basically we set up the initial functionality and we make sure that it works in the Postman, as well as in this case, we'll have to try it with the front end, and only then we'll make it more complex. That way, it's way easier to chase some silly bugs. So, in this case, what I'm looking for? Well, first, I want to set up a function like we did over here. So let me just use this one as a template. So send email, final, controller, send mail. And effectively, notice I have this send email ethereal. So I'm just going to set it up in this case as send email. So that's going to be my function. Now, eventually it will take the argument. So that way it will be dynamic and we'll be able to reuse it in send reset password and in send verification email. But for time being, pretty much just hard code everything. So let's go to our send email where it is. It's over here. And then let's get the node mailer first. So node mailer, and that is equal to require. Then we get the package, correct? So node mailer. Then once we have the package, next we want to go with const send email. That's the function. It's going to be async. And again, eventually we'll pass in the parameters, not for now. Now let's quickly jump back to the docs. And in order to speed this up, I'm just going to copy some lines of code. So first, we want to set this up as a test account. And then in Ethereal, remember, we already have all these values. So I can just take this one. Then that is going to be next thing that we copy and paste here. And then we want to set up the functionality, correct? So we want to send the email. So let's take this where we go with transporter send email. And let's add that right after here. And let's just change some values around. Or you know what, let's just leave it the way it is. That way we'll know for sure that everything works. Again, if you want, you can change it around. But in my case, I'll just leave it the way it is. We want to export that. So module and then exports. And we'll go with send email. And for now, we will import that in our controller, basically in the auth controller. And when we register, we will try to send it. But just keep in mind that eventually we will use this send email in the other files. So we'll use the send reset one and send verification. And therefore we will pass here some arguments. This is just so we can test whether our initial functionality works. And the way we'll do that is by going to auth controller, like I said, we'll go over here, and eventually it's going to be coming from the utils. But for now, let's just set it up here where I'll say send email, and that is equal to require. And now let's look for that specific file. So utils here, and then we're looking for send email, but eventually, again, it's going to be coming from here because we will add it to the indexes and all that. Then let's scroll down where we're registering. And then, like I said, we're not going to be sending back the token this way, correct? So what we can do is just remove the token. That's step number one. And then right after we create the user, what I want to do is send my email. So I'll go here with await, and then we go with send email, and then let's just invoke it. So here's the next step. Now I want to go back to my Postman, and then where I have registered, like I said, I removed all the users so I can start from the scratch. Otherwise, it's just going to be annoying. I'll go here with John. I'll send it. I should get back the successful response. So here I have, please check your email. But notice how it took longer, at least a little bit longer, correct? And that is because we were sending the email. So now we can save it here, all of these requests. And now let's go to our Ethereal. And we want to make sure that we have the email. So let's go here, Ethereal. We'll go to open mailbox. And what do you know? What is this over here? This is bar example, baz example, and hello. And if you can see the same thing, we are moving in the right direction. Now what I want you to do is to go back to the desktop or wherever this is located. You're looking for, again, the same project. We're looking for auth workflow. And we have the starter, correct? So now take this front end and set it up somewhere. Now, if you want, you can run it directly. But just remember, then you'll have to use multiple terminals and all that. So I don't know. That's not what I'm going to do. So I'll open up a new window in my text editor. And I'll just take the front end code, drag and drop. And then two things we need to do. First, we'll have to install all the dependencies. So it might take a while, and therefore I'll probably pause the video. And once you install everything, then we need to go with npm start. So let me make this bigger. Let me open up the console in the front end. Again, notice how we pretty much navigated away from our server. And here we want to go with npm install and npm start. And on localhost 3000, you will have your front end running. And you're not going to be able to do all the functionality yet, because we basically have just set up the verification process. But since we're sending the email, we should be getting the email in our mailbox. So we won't be able to log in yet and all that, but we should be able to set up the registration where basically we're getting back the email. And you know what, while the packages are being installed, let me just go to send email and change some things around, where this is going to be coming from coding addict and then gmail.com. Then let's just call this coding addict, just so I can see something different. And as far as well, let's go to a user at user.com. Again, some random email. We'll say testing email, hello world. And why don't we go here with testing email. Let's save these ones, and eventually it's going to spin up. Again, the URL is going to be localhost 3000. And this is a React application, and I'm using create a React app. And then navigate to register. And you know what? In order to basically make it easier for myself, I'm going to navigate back to the users. So I did create a user, I just didn't verify it. And therefore, I got the email, but technically it was just a dumb email. So let me remove this one. I'll remove John from my database. Then back in the front end, the localhost 3000, navigate to register. And in my case, I'm going to go with the same values. So John, Gmail, and then come up with whatever password you want. So in my case, I'm going to set up my password. Then click on register. Again, it's going to take a little bit. We're sending the email. And eventually you should see this. And also, if you take a look at your Ethereal, and if you refresh, voila, we have to user at user.com, and we have testing email. If you have this in place, you're good to go. Then we can start adding functionality. If not, please troubleshoot, because whatever we're about to do next is not going to work. Beautiful. And with all of this in place, now we can finally send verification link to our user. And we'll do that in multiple steps. First, we'll refactor send email. Then we'll set up send verification email. And then once we're done with that, then we're going to pass the arguments from the register and nicely send a link. Now, as always, I will start by basically cleaning out my database just so it's easier for me on the front end. Now, I'm not going to send few emails right now. I'm just going to set up everything and we'll send one and see if everything works. Basically, I don't want to do this step by step where we add a little bit of code and then I send, because essentially I don't want to keep on deleting the user or creating ones from the scratch. Therefore, just please be vigilant of what's happening. So let's go back first to our application. And I want to go to send email. And let's take a look. So here I have this node mailer, create transport, correct? Now, what am I passing in? I'm passing in some kind of config object, correct? So wouldn't it be nicer if we would just set that object in a separate file? And then this is going to make the send email slimmer. And also keep in mind that, yes, normally if you're using, for example, SendGrid, you'll want to set up these values in .env. Again, this is just for testing, so I'm not going to worry about that. And now I want to navigate to node mailer config. I want to set up here module exports. And like I said, I'm just going to export the object that I'm using. So back in send email, instead of passing in the entire object, I'll cut it out and I'll set it equal in my exports. And then once I have this in place, I can go back to send email and we can just import, correct? We can come up with whatever name we want since we're exporting as default anyway. So let's go here, const node mailer, and I'm going to call this config is equal to, now we just need to look for the file that's right next to us. So we'll look for node mailer config. And where we create the transport, what do we want to do? We want to pass it in. So that's step number one. Second, like I said, since we'll use this functionality, the send email functionality in send reset password, as well as send verification email, it would make sense if we add here arguments. Basically, who's going to get the email? So two, what is going to be the subject, as well as what is going to be the text that we're sending back, or HTML. Because keep in mind that each user is going to get that unique link, correct? So let's go up here and we'll just say that we'll be looking for three things. We're going to be looking for to parameter, as well as subject parameter and HTML. Now, as always, it's my preference to set it up as an object. So that way I don't need to worry about the order. If you prefer just setting them up one by one, that is really up to you. As far as from, again, this is the case where you can hard code that in .env and then just use it. In my case, I'm just going to use it here. I'm going to say coding addict, and then as far as the email, it's just going to stay the same. So this is going to be the value that shows the sender address, correct? Now, for the rest of them, what are we going to do? Well, we'll use the fact that in JavaScript, if the key name actually is the same as the variable name, which is going to be our parameter, we simply can go to, then subject, and then HTML. Effectively, what I'm doing right now, I'm saying that whatever values I'll pass in over here will be used when I'm sending the email. Hopefully that is clear. And also we need to keep in mind one thing where, since this is a sync, we are returning a promise regardless. So we don't need to set up here await. Effectively, it's going to work if we just go here with return. Now, if you want to test it out right now in the register, you can definitely do so and just double check whether it works. Just keep in mind that now you need to start passing in those values when it comes to subject and all that. But in my case, what I'm going to do, I will set up the send verification email. Because like I said, I want to reuse this send email also in the password one. So we need to somehow figure out how we can pass those values from the send verification email. So let's navigate here. And first what we want to do is grab that send email. So send email is equal to acquire, and then let's look for send email. Once we have this in place, what we want to do is create a function. So instead of calling send email directly in register, we will call send verification email and we'll return the send email from that function. And again, it's going to be a sync, so we don't need to await inside of the function body, since at the end of the day, if you remember in here, we're sticking await in front of it anyway. So it doesn't really matter. So let me just actually save some stuff. And let's come up with that function that we're going to be exporting from this file. So let's say here send verification email. Again, it's going to be a sync for starters, and it's going to be looking for following things. It will need a name, so username. We'll also need a user email. And remember, those things we do have in register, correct? We want a verification token. That's extremely important. Otherwise, whatever we are about to set up is not going to really make sense, as well as origin. And I fully understand that this might not make sense right now, and therefore I will spend an entire video showing you multiple options that you have for origin, but long story short, this is going to be the URL for the front end. whether that is 3000 on our local setup or it is the production one. So just keep that in mind. That is the URL. And then as far as the functionality for now, here's what I want to do. I simply want to return send email. Again, this is async. So we can simply return send email since we are returning a promise at the end of the day anyway. And then remember, when it comes to send email, what do we want? Well, we want two parameter, and that is where we're going to be sending, correct? So I'll set two equal to what? Well, that is going to be equal to an email, to the user email, correct? So we go here with email. Then, as far as the subject, well, let's come up with the value. We'll say subject, and we'll go with email confirmation. Now, again, why we're passing subject as an argument, because like I already said quite a few times, we will reuse this functionality. So that's why it's important for us to set it up here as a parameter. So in here, let's say email confirmation. Then we also want to pass the HTML, correct? So we're going to go here with HTML. And before we do anything, let's set up the message. And I'm going to do that above, where we're going to go with message. And since it's going to be an HTML, I'll right away set up as a paragraph here. I'll close it. And we're not going to set up the link yet, but let's just add a text. And effectively, it's going to be, please confirm your email by clicking on the following link. Again, we're not going to add a actual link yet. For now, we just want a text. So I have my HTML argument, and I'll just hardcode it equal to some kind of message. So in this case, I'm going to go with heading 4 here, and let's just say hello. Now I'll use the name. That's why I'm using template literals here. So this is going to be the username that we're sending. So let's go here with name. I'll close the heading 4 here. And then in the next line, I want to send the message. So here's what I want to do. I want to save it just so I get the formatting correct. And then I want to access that message. Again, eventually there's going to be a confirmation link. So these are the things that we currently have. We have name, email, and verification token, as well as origin. But for now, we're just using a name, email, and we set it equal to 2. And the name is going to be in the HTML where we're sending. Hopefully this is clear. So what we want to do right now is export this function. We want to go here with module, export is equal to send verification email. That's my function. And now I'll have to do a few steps, because if you remember in the utils, I do have the index.js and I already have some imports in register. So it kind of makes sense to me if I add both the send reset password as well as send verification email in here as well, because that way I can use it with the rest of the stuff in the other files. So instead of send email like we did manually, in this case, I'm going to go for const and then remember the name, send verification email is equal to, we require it. I look for my files, so send verification email, and then we want to add it here, send verification email. And then where we have the auth controller, more specifically, where we have right now the create token user and all that, since that is coming from the utils, here's what we can do. I can go with send verification email. I can remove send email for now. And now let's start setting up that functionality. So we have the basic setup in place. Now what I want to do is scroll a little bit down, and then where I create the user, instead of send email, we want to go with send verification email. And now remember, we want to pass in quite a few things over there, correct? So we want to pass in email. We want to pass in verification token as well as origin. Again, I'll spend an entire video on origin and what are your options. For now, I just want to showcase that if we go back to auth controller, what we're looking for is the user, because pretty much user has all of those values. The only one we'll have to set it up over here ourselves is going to be that origin. So let's go here And let's say that name will be equal to user.name. Email is going to be equal to user.email, you guessed it. Then verification token will be equal to user.verification token. And then lastly, we want to set up the origin. So where the user will navigate once he or she clicks on that link. And for time being, what is the URL where we're working? It's localhost 3000, correct? So effectively, it is as simple as that. You just check what is the development URL and you set it up. So in my case, again, just because I prefer this way, I'm just going to go here and I'm going to copy and can do that above the user, below the user. That is entirely irrelevant. And we go here with origin, and that is equal, and set it up a string, and just remove the / here. Just set it up as localhost 3000. Again, why I know that this value is there, because that's the URL. If you have a different one, then of course pass in a different one. Then we set up the origin, and before we can send anything, there's one more thing that we need to do. We need to go back to a send verification email. And now we need to use these values to construct that URL. And yes, on the front end here, there is a route that actually will match to whatever we're going to set up right now. So again, this is what you need to understand, that you'll have to set this up pretty much synchronously, where on a back end, you'll be like, hey, please confirm your email by clicking on a following link. But that link will lead to your front end, because that is the only way how pretty much you can set it up. I mean, the user cannot just navigate to some magic server link. So if you're setting up a link, it needs to go to some kind of front end. Granted, that front end might be here. It might be on a public. It doesn't have to be a separate application. But regardless, it's going to navigate to a front end somewhere. And then from that front end, what we're going to do? Well, remember, we just set up verify email. And again, I'll talk about that functionality in the following video. For now, what I want to do, I want to go back to send verification email. And where I have the message, above it, I'll construct that URL. I'll say const, and I'll call this verify email. And that is going to be equal to my URL. And in here, I'll use template strings. I'll use the origin, in my case, localhost 3000. And then I know that there is already on the front end a route. And route is following user, so /user /verify token. Again, this is already set up on the front end. And normally this is what you'll have to do. Then we'll go with a question mark. So we're passing in the query string. I'll say token is equal to a verification token. So let me select it here. So verification token, and email is equal to email. So now you can kind of already see that front end will get those values, and then the front end will send it back here, just like we did with a postman. Only in this case, the front end is doing all the heavy lifting. And then in here, let's go with email and pass it as well. So that's the URL. Now, what's missing here is an href. It is the actual link tag. So we go here with link, and we'll set it equal to a. So that's the link element. We set up the href. We have right away or a template string. And if we don't, then my apologies. Let me actually fix it up. So where I have the message, I didn't have the template string, my bad. So let me set up as a template string. Then I want to add the quotation marks. I want to access my verified email. And then I want to set up some kind of text here as well. So I'm placing a link tag inside of the paragraph, correct? And as far as the value for the href, well, we're constructing. We have here origin and all that. And let me just write some kind of gibberish. I'm going to say verify email. Let's save it. That's how our file is going to look like. Maybe let me put this one in a separate line here, just so it's a little bit clear. And now I want to go back to my front end and register one more time, just so I can see whether everything works. So let's navigate to a localhost 3000. We're going to start by clicking on register. Again, my database is empty and I suggest you do the same. It's just going to be easier instead of guessing which user you haven't created yet. We go with email and then let's go with password. Now let's click. Beautiful. Functionality is taking place. And yep, we have success. Please check your email to verify the account. Okay, awesome. Now let's navigate to Ethereal. Let's refresh. And we should have email confirmation. Where is it going? Well, to john@gmail.com, correct? Why? Well, because that's what I used to sign up. That's how we verify. And then once we open up the email, voila, we have hello, John. That's the name, correct? Please confirm your email by clicking on the following link. So now what is going to happen? Well, we will navigate to where? We'll navigate here. Origin. What is origin? Localhost 3000, correct? Why? Well, because that's how I set it up over here. Now, once we navigate there, once we get there, we are looking for user verified token. Again, this route needs to be present on front end. We're not magically creating here on a server. I already created on a front end. So that's why I'm saying you'll work synchronously. You'll set up the backend, but you'll also have to set up at the same time the front end in order for this to work. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And then I'm passing in two things. I'm passing in the token as well as the email using the query string parameter. And next video, I'll cover a little bit more in detail how the setup works in the front end. For now, what I simply want you to do is click on this. And for some reason, it's going to complain that there is no such page. And most likely, it's because I made some dumb typo or something along those lines. So let me double check on my front end. Yep, the route is verify email. My deepest apologies. Let me go back over here. It's not verify token. It is verify email. So now let's try that one more time. Let's go back home. I'll register. And since I already registered John, I'll have to register Peter. So let's go here with peter@gmail.com. And then the password. Now let's register. Okay, again, we should get the email. And we do. So let me take a look. Those are my messages. And now we have one for Peter. So you can clearly see that it is working. And then if we click on verify email, now we finally should navigate here. And again, behind the scenes, what happens once we hit this route, and I'll show you in the next video the functionality in the front end, but we grab these values and we communicate with that verify email. Remember, one of the controllers we just set up. And once we do that, we can successfully go back to a login. I say Peter here at gmail.com. I provide the password and I should see here, hello Peter. Why? Well, because we already have the show me route, correct? So the moment we verify the user, we are good to go. Then in here, the show me is correct because that is sitting in the cookie. Hopefully this wasn't too much. Hopefully my mistake didn't throw you off. And now we can move on to the next step. Beautiful. And once we have the send verification email functionality in place, now let me cover some gotchas that you need to be aware of. And first, let me just start by showing you at least how in React I set up the functionality. Again, if you're using different front end, it is going to change. But in my case, I did set up following page. So I'm using React. I have multiple pages. I'm using React Router. And this is the page. So I have user and then verify email. That's why initially I got 404 because in here I messed it up. I said the origin, which was localhost 3000, then user, and I went with token. And of course that didn't match. So it went to an error. And I believe I called it verify. So let me just navigate here. And then what you'll notice that the moment page loads, if I'm not loading, I go with a verify token. So that's the function that I'm invoking. And then inside of that function, actually make a post request where? Well, we just set up that route, correct? Right before we set up the email functionality. What was the route? Verify email. And in here, I get a token and email from query string parameters. So in here, we set up a link with a query string parameters. So now back on my front end, I grab those things and then I set up a post request where I have verification token as well as the email, just like we did in the Postman. Hopefully that is clear. And then if everything is correct, then we showcase account confirm and we can go to a login. And if there is an error, which is going to be the case if one of them is missing, or that is already second attempt where the verification token does not match to what we're getting back, then we will display that error. So that is as far as the front end is concerned. Now let's navigate back to the back end and let's discuss this origin, because I think it's a very, very important topic. So in here, like I said, I went with localhost 3000. And probably your question is, well, okay, but what about production? Well, it's as simple as that. So I go here. Once I push this up to production, and I believe the name here was React Node and blah, blah, blah. Grab the URL, copy and paste, and that's it. And you set up a origin. So in my case, I'm going to go with new origin. Just please keep in mind that, of course, I do need to use the same variable. Again, I removed the / and I'm good to go. That's exactly what I did. Now, I do want to showcase that since we have that request object, we can get quite a few goodies in there. That can come in really handy when you need to start constructing it. Now, what am I talking about? Well, first, let's just go with log. And then I'll also do some console logging eventually here, just so you can clearly see what's happening. So for now, I'm just going to console log the request. And in this case, I will make that request from the front end simply because when it comes to Postman, some things are going to be missing. So therefore, let me go back to my 3000. And in here, eventually we'll be able to log out. But since we'll change the functionality there, for time being, it's not going to work. So what I want you to do is simply go to the application here where we have the cookies and just remove them. So just remove all of them, fresh, and basically you'll be able to start from the scratch. Again, yes, eventually we'll fix the functionality, but you'll have to wait a little bit. So let's go back to register, and I'm going to go with Susan at gmail.com, and then let's come up with some kind of password. And the only thing that I'm really looking for is the request object in the console. So yep, successfully we send an email and all that. But what I'm looking for is this. And what I'm trying to show you is not the body. Yes, we already know how to access that. But in here you get bunch of useful info. Effectively, you can use a bunch of things from here to construct that origin. Now, you do need to keep some things in mind where your front end is behind proxy, and eventually so will be your server. So that's why, in my opinion, it's definitely way easier like this, where you just say, okay, if I know that I have only one front end application and it's going to be either in development here or in production here, then I just hard code them. But if you want to start looking for those values, whether that is where the server is located, whether that is where the request is coming from, yes, you can get it from here. And most of the stuff is going to be sitting in the headers. And effectively, the way you access that, you go with rec, get, and then whatever is the header name. Again, this is a giant object, so there's tons of things in there. So therefore, it is easier if you know what you're looking for. But in general, the headers is where effectively you'll be able to access most of the data. So for example, in here, correct? I go with origin. Now, what is the origin? Well, that is localhost 5000. And all of that is nice, but keep in mind that we're not sending the user, so we're not setting up our link to localhost 5000. That's where the server is. Now, why is it here 5000? Well, because we have a proxy, correct? And therefore, that's what I'm saying, that once you start setting up the proxies and all that, it gets really tricky really fast. So in this case, if I want to see what is the original one, I need to go with this one, the forwarded host, where I can see that it's actually coming from 3000. I can see the protocol, I can see the port, and all of that cool stuff. So let me just log some stuff just so you have an idea. So in my case, I'm going to stick with origin. And then if you ever want to go with production one, then just add the proper URL. Now, what things I want to showcase, I'm going to go here with const and protocol, and that is equal to request protocol. That's the property on the object. Then if we want to get the host, we go with const, and as I note, I actually wanted to log this. So protocol, then I'm going to go with const host is equal to rec get, and I'm looking for host. Again, that's the syntax. You have a header, and then you just go with get, and then whatever is the header name. So let's also log that host. And if you want, you can add maybe here a protocol. Maybe that's going to make a little bit more sense. So let me cut it out here. And then I'll set up properly where I access the variable and copy and paste the protocol. So let me do it here as well. Here I'll say host, just so we have a cleaner console. Host here. And then let me showcase the forwarded host and forwarded protocol. So const forwarded, and then let's just say host. So rec and get, and then the name. And the name here is X forwarded, and we go with host. And the same copy and paste, and now we're looking for the protocol. And that will be equal to the header by the name of proto. And then let's do similar console log, where we go with forwarded host, and then we have the variable, of course. So forwarded host, copy and paste, and let's set it up protocol as well. And as a side note, when it comes to a postman, so when you're sending this from a postman and you're logging the origin, basically where it is coming from, effectively what you'll get back is null, so nothing. So let me set up here the protocol, and then I'll show you one more thing. So forward the protocol, and remember what was the origin, correct? Somewhere here was the origin. I showcased the localhost 5000. So we can definitely check that. But remember, like I already said probably a million times, when it comes to proxies and everything, it's not as straightforward as it looks. So let me go here with const origin is equal to, and again, this is really optional just so you kind of get the overall picture. This is really nothing that you'll have to do in this project. Let me go here with log, and I'll use pretty much the same thing. I'm just going to showcase the origin. So we're going to go here with origin. And this is the case where, yes, one last time, we will have to set up some kind of random user. And again, in between the videos, I'll clean out my database. I know that for some people, this probably is annoying, but that's just the way it is. So let me go back, and I'm going to navigate back to register one more time. Let me go with Susan in this case, or maybe I already went with Susan. David, maybe. David. And then, before I forget, I don't want to log the big request because it's going to be too much info. We'll go with Gmail, and then let's set up as secret. Let's register. And it looks like I have an error. So let me go back to my server, and I can see that identify origin has already been declared. My bad. So let me say here temp origin, temp, and then origin. And I'm still going to be looking for the same header, so that's not going to change. We're just going to say temp origin. Now, let's go back. Let's try to send. We're loading. Okay, awesome. So now we're sending the email, but what we're really interested is this. So notice this is going to be the origin, which again, where the request is coming from, which is 5,000. And that's not what we need. What we need is 3,000. Where is that located? Well, that is in the forwarded host, correct? Now, what about protocol? This is HTTP. So, of course, once we publish this, most likely it's going to be HTTPS. So also something that we can get from the headers. Then let's take a look at the host. And basically, this is our server. So I fully understand that this might be a little bit confusing where you have origin and host. Just remember, this is because we have a proxy on a front end. So in my case, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove console logs. I think that they will be on the way for you, but I will leave these values for you just in case you ever need a reference. So let me remove these console logs and we're pretty much good to go. Now I want to set up a refresh token functionality. Okay, once we can verify the email, now let's tackle the next item on our agenda, refresh token functionality. And before we continue, let me just say that this probably will be the toughest part of the project, just because we'll have to make modifications in multiple places at the same time. Now, I will try to split it up as much as possible. Essentially, I'll try to set it up in a bunch of small videos, just so it's less confusing. But if you still get stuck, or some of the stuff is still confusing, just remember, you can always go back and rewatch the videos. Now, let's just start with general overview of what we're trying to accomplish. So at the moment, I have one user. I have John, and the good news is that we can test everything with just simple login functionality. So we won't have to do that whole song and dance where we create the user, then I want to delete them and all that stuff. That was just for verify email. In this case, we'll be able to test everything with a login. And yes, on our front end, we still don't have the logout functionality. So if you ever need to get to a login page, just go to URL bar, go with /, and then type login. And then eventually, yes, the logout functionality also will be there. Now, for the time being, I just want to showcase what happens. So I'm going to go to my DevTools application. Here I have the cookies. Everything is empty, blah, 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 blah. And let's just go here with John, gmail.com. And then I'm going to go with secret. I log in. Life is great. I can see that I have John here. I have the ID role and all that. So what's the problem with this one token approach? Well, remember that when we're talking about REST, it is stateless, meaning there is an expiration for this cookie and also for the token. Since we're sending token with the cookie, the moment cookie expires, that's it, we're done. And what we need to understand is that just because we were successful to log in, once this cookie expires, then the user, if he or she is trying to access the orders here in a dashboard, or maybe, I don't know, products and stuff along those lines, they will be logged out. And just to demonstrate that, I'm going to go back to the project. And where we have JWT, instead of 1 day, I'm going to go with 5 seconds. How I can get 5 seconds? Well, that is 1,000 multiplied by 5. So at the moment, yes, our expiration is 1 day. But just to simulate how it looks like once this expiration runs out, I'm going to go with 5 seconds. Now, again, you don't have to do this. But in my case, I'm going to look here for those 5 seconds. So I'll comment that. And then I'll set it up over here. And now let me navigate, like I said, back to a login since I cannot log out. Let me just say login page. And let me do that one more time. I'm going to say john@gmail.com. And then the secret. And then I don't have any other routes. So I'm just going to wait for 5 seconds just to showcase that if, for example, user is again trying to access some kind of resource and we can see that the cookie has expired, what do you think is going to happen? Well, on the front end, we'll log out the user, correct? Again, just to simulate that, in this case, I'm just going to refresh and notice. That's the normal response, where if the user is not logged in anymore, then he or she cannot access the resources, correct? But what would be a better approach? Well, a better approach would be following, where if I go to a final application, I'm going to go to inspect again. Again, I'm going to log in. And then again, I'm going to show you what we're getting back. You'll notice that actually we'll get back 2 cookies. So one is going to be the access token, and the second one will be the refresh token. Now, again, for demonstration purposes, the access token has a very short expiration, just so you can see how everything works. But in general, this is where you can set it up to be 15 minutes, 1 hour, 1 day, or whatever. So essentially, so the user can get everything done that he or she wants. But we also have this refresh token. And then what's going to happen in our middleware? Remember, we have middleware that is checking for JWTs and all that. We'll check for both. We'll check for access token as well as refresh token. And notice now, access token has expired. But if I refresh, if refresh token is still valid, meaning it hasn't expired, then again, we get back both cookies and we're not logged out. Hopefully this made sense. And now we can start setting up the functionality. Beautiful. And we're going to start by setting up the token model. So that's the only model we'll create extra in this project. And the way it's going to work, we're going to create token.js in the models folder. Then we want to create a refresh token, IP, user agent properties, all string, all required. We also want to set up is valid, which is going to be a Boolean. Now, by default, it is going to be true. And then also we want to tie this to a user. So we want to set up a reference where we're looking for the user model. And then lastly, I also want to set up the timestamps and you know the rest. Export the model and yada, 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 yada. So let's go here to a new model. Say here, token.js. And let's just start by setting everything up. We want to get the mongoose, correct? That's the first step. So let's go here with mongoose and then require mongoose package. Then we want to create that schema. Const token schema is equal to new mongoose dot and then schema. And inside of it, like I said, we'll start with refresh token type string, and then required is set to true. Let's save that one. I'll copy and paste that one 2 more times. And I just need to change some values around here. So this is not going to be a refresh token. It's going to be an IP address. As a side note, when it comes to user agent and IP address, we're not going to use them in this project. I just want to showcase where you can get them on request. And right after IP, I also want to set up user agent. So essentially what device is accessing our project. Then we also want to set up is valid. So let's copy and paste. And let's just say is valid. Is valid. And then it's not going to be a string. It is going to be a Boolean. And then, like I said, I also want to set it up with a user. I want to reference the user. And we already know the drill. So in order to speed this up, let's just go somewhere where we are already doing that. And let's just copy and paste. I really don't see the point of retyping that. So let's grab this one, token.js. Okay, we're setting this up with a user now. And then we also want to set up timestamps, and we'll set it equal to true. Last but not least, we want to export. So let's go here with module dot exports. That is equal to a mongoose, then model, and we'll set it up as token, comma, and then token schema. And with this in place, now we can start slowly refactoring our code in the auth controller. Beautiful. And once we have the token in place, like I said, now navigate to auth controller. We're pretty much done with register. I'm pretty sure we're not gonna come back here. So let me scroll down. We verify the email. Okay, that looks about right. I want to close the README for now because this is pretty much a new stuff. So I think it's better if we do together. And then JWTs we will still return here. So I'll leave that one open. And then when it comes to a login, once I get my token user, we'll have to set up more functionalities. So this is the token user. This is the one that I can safely pass, correct? And here's what I want to do right now. First, I will comment out the attach cookies to response because we'll pass in more data and I want to do that in a separate video. So I want to split it up as much as possible so that way we have less confusion. And once I get my user, once I'm successful, I actually want to do two things. First, I want to check whether there is an existing token for the user, but we'll do that later. So for now, I'll just say check for existing token, and I'll showcase why that is important. So for now, don't worry about it. But before we go any further, above it, let's just say create, refresh, and then token. Now I'll start with just let, and it's going to be an empty string. And the reason for that, because when we'll be checking for that existing token, we'll set the value. And again, if that doesn't make sense right now, you'll see that once we check for existing token. So for now, here's what I want to do. I want to go with let, and we'll say refresh token, and that will be equal to an empty string, correct? Then, like I said, there's going to be functionality to check for existing token. Not going to worry about it right now. And I want to create that token now. Since user is logging in, and I want to set up two cookies. I want to have the access one and the refresh one. And essentially, I want to create that token. I want to create that token model and tie it to a user. Sounds about right? So let's start here with a refresh token. And we'll use the crypto one. Same like we did with verification. We'll go with random bytes. I'm going to go with 40. And we'll invoke toString and we'll pass in the hex. Then I want to set up the user agent and IP. And again, maybe this is a repetition, but what I'm trying to do right now is get all of these fields here. Because I'm assuming that the user doesn't have already a token, which is something that we will cover later. So for now, I'm just assuming that user is logging in for the first time, and I right away want to attach this token to a user. And then one by one, I want to set up the IP, user agent is valid, and yada, yada, yada. So back in the auth controller, we have the first one. We have refresh token. Now what? Well, now let's take a look at how we can access user agent. So in here, let's set up user agent property. That is equal to request, headers. And the way we access that, we just go with user and then agent. So this is another way how we can access something in headers. Remember the previous one that I showed you in the register? It was like this. It was rec, get, and then whatever the name. Now also an option is this one, where you go with rec, headers. So we're still looking in the request. We're still looking in the headers, and I'm more specifically looking for this one, the user agent. Then I also want to get the IP address. So say here IP is equal to rec, and you guessed it, the property is IP. And now let's create a object with all these three properties. And in this case, I'm going to call this user token, and that is equal to refresh token. Then I want to set up the IP address, user agent, and then remember the is valid is there by default, so I don't need to do anything, but I do need to pass in the user, correct? Because that will be required. So in here we go with user, And that is equal to what? Well, if I scroll up, there's my user. Where is the ID? It is underscore ID. So we'll go here with user and then underscore and ID. So I have my token. Now I need to get the model, correct? So let's copy and paste. We're looking for the token here. Token. And that is coming from the models, of course. Get the token. And in order to create one, we just need to invoke token.create. So let's keep scrolling where we have the user token. And then in here, let's just go with await token dot create. Let's pass in the user token, the object we just created. And like I said, we'll deal with cookies eventually, meaning in one of the following videos. For now, I just want to showcase that we're getting back the token user, but I also want to showcase the token. So token here. Now this is temporary. Actually, we're not going to send it back, but just to showcase that we actually get it there, I'll show you that in the Postman as well as the database. So let me save this now. And like I said, the good news is that we don't need to do these deletions and registering and all that. We can simply go back to a Postman. I'm going to go to a John. And if everything is correct, I should, and path is valid is required. Okay, let's see. Didn't I set it up as default? Boolean required. And my apologies. I went here with required true. What I should have done is set up as default and true. And I believe that I properly showcased that in the README. My apologies. So in here I said, yeah, default true. And then I actually set it up as required. My deepest apologies for this silly bug. Now let's try to do that one more time. Where I'm going to go back and we'll send it. And now check it out. So not only I'm getting back the user, I also get the token. So that's the token that is tied to a user with refresh token, with IP, with user agent is valid, and all of that cool stuff. So now what we can do, we can take a look how we can set up two cookies when we're attaching cookies to a response. Awesome. And once we have the refresh token functionality in the login one, now let's switch to attach cookies and actually set up two cookies in our response. And if you remember, initially when I created the function, I said that at that time, it kind of didn't make sense why we're calling it attach cookies, but eventually there's going to be multiple cookies. So here's what I want to do. I want to uncomment it. And instead of just user, which is equal to our token user, what I also want to pass in is the refresh token. So effectively, not the token that I'm getting back. Talking about this one. So the one that we're creating with crypto and all of that. So I'll delete this one. Otherwise, it's quite confusing why we have a bunch of tokens in here. I'll remove it from here as well. And we're not going to send it back, but where we're attaching it to a cookies, we do want to pass in the refresh token. We'll save it. Then we'll navigate back to JWT. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy and paste this entire functionality, and I'll leave it for your reference. Maybe I'll give it a different name. I'll say attach single cookie to response, just so you can have it for your reference. Attach single cookie to response. And I'm not going to export that. I just want to have it here so you can have a reference later. And now let's start working in this attach cookies to response. So what are we trying to accomplish here? Well, we have the create JWT functionality, correct? What are we doing here? Well, we're creating our JSON web tokens. But in this case, we're going to create two cookies. And in fact, if we have a JWT in a cookie, we pretty much can remove the expiration for the token because it's going to be controlled with a cookie. So the first thing that I want to do, where I have the JWT, where we're creating one. I just want to pass in the JWT secret. That's it. So let me remove the expiration from here. Okay, that looks about right. Then we keep on scrolling. We have is token valid. That still stays the same. There is no difference. But in here, we're looking for three things now. We want to get the response, because remember, we'll still have to do the same thing. We'll have to attach it to a response. That's number one. Number two, I also want the user and the refresh token, correct? So we go with comma, and then we say refresh token. That's what we're getting from the auth controller. And now it's simple as creating two tokens. So first one is going to be an access token where we just pass in the user, but the refresh token will also have this value. It will have that refresh token. And this will make sense a little bit later when we actually start checking for both of them in our middleware. So let's understand two things. First, there's going to be two cookies. Not just one cookie, there's actually going to be two cookies. In one of them, we'll have the access token, where we just have the user info. And the second one will be a refresh token, where not only we have the user in the payload, but we also have the refresh token string value. So let's start here, where instead of a token, I'm going to go with access token. And I'm kind of a big fan of long names. They're kind of descriptive, and I really like that. So access token JWT. I have the function. What am I looking for here? For the payload, correct? And in this case, payload is still equal to what? It is equal to my user. And just to stay consistent, I'll actually set this up as an object. I'll say, yep, payload, and in there, I'll have the user. So that's my access token, JSON web token. Then I want to create the refresh one. So let's copy and paste, and we'll say refresh or refresh token JWT. We still want to create the JSON token. Now in this case, like I said, instead of just the user, we'll pass in the refresh token as well. So we save it here. And then we want to set up two cookies. We want to have the access token one, and we also want to have a refresh one. And again, the big picture is this, where when it comes to the access one, you want to set it up short term, meaning that could be 15 minutes, that could be 1 hour, that could be 1 day or whatever. And the refresh one is going to be longer. That one will be, 30 days, 60 days, whatever the case may be. And at the moment, we have this one cookie. And like I keep saying, we'll have multiple. So here's what I want to do. First, I just want to modify some things in here. And then I'll copy and paste, and then we'll set up the refresh one. So now I'm creating that access one. And as far as the name, I'm going to go with access token. Then what is going to be the value? Well, I'm looking for this guy, right? So access token JWT. It's still going to be HTTP only. That doesn't change. Now, when it comes to expires, I'll set it up while testing to something that's really, really short. And I also want to showcase that we can control that with max age property. So for the access token, I'll remove this expires, even though eventually I most likely set it up here equal to 1 day. Secure, still the same thing, only if it is production, signed is equal to true. And let's go here with max age. And here we pass in those values in those milliseconds. So for example, if I want to have 1 second, I'm just going to pass in the 1000. Let's save it. So that's my access token. Now I want to set up that refresh token. How do we do that? Well, let's copy and paste. And then let's set it up from the scratch where it's not going to be an access token. It's going to be a refresh token. As far as the value, you get the gist. We're looking for refresh token. In this case, HTTP only true. All that is true. Now I want to go back to that expires. So let's scroll down where we have expires one. Yeah, for now, let's just keep it as 1 day, and then eventually I'll change it to something longer. So what we're looking for here is this 1 day And of course, the one day value is right over here, correct? So that what gives me 1 day in milliseconds. Let's save that and let's try one more time in a Postman. So I shouldn't see the token. That's not in response anymore, but we should see 2 cookies. So let's send one more time here. And once we log in, check it out. We have 2 cookies. Now I have access token cookie, and I also have the refresh token cookie. And this one will be the short one. This one again is there just so user can get everything done. And then the refresh one is longer. So that way you can have this nice user experience where they come in, they do all the stuff they need to do, and then there's always this refresh token in the background. And every time, basically, we will log in, we'll set those values from the scratch. Hopefully, this wasn't too confusing, and now we can just continue and start adding more functionality to it. Beautiful. And once we have set up both cookies, before we head on over and start fixing our middleware, because we need to keep in mind we'll have to do that. The moment in our authentication, we're just looking for a token. So I suggest not even trying to do anything on the front end because it's not going to work. We'll have to fix this one eventually. But before we do that, there's one more thing that we need to fix in the auth controller. We need to check for existing token. Why? Well, because if we take a look at our database, I have my users, the moment I have John, and then every time now John logs in, we are creating this token. But that's not the best approach. And also, I want to check whether isValid is true. Since that way, if John or any other user comes to the site and starts doing stuff that I don't want, I can always turn this into a false. And then the moment that access token expires, John or any other user that I'm not a fan of, basically is not going to be able to log in again. How we're going to do that? Well, we're going to go back to auth controller, and where we have the refresh token, what we're going to do is first we'll check whether token exists, and we'll use that using the user. So let's go here with existing token, and that is equal to await, then token. So that's my model. Then the method we're looking for is find one, and I want to get the token that is associated with a user. So I go here with user and then user underscore ID. So that's going to get me the token. Now, if the token exists, here's what I want to do. I want to say if and then existing token. If it exists, then I want to pull out isValid first. So say here isValid, and that will be equal to existing token. So I'm getting back the object, and I'm right away pulling out the property, and I'll check if it is true. Now, by default, it's going to be true. Remember, that's how we set it up. But again, if the user is doing something that I don't want, I can always go back and change that value to false. So in here, let's say if isValid is false, then we want to throw on authenticated error. So I'll take this one, copy and paste, and we'll just say invalid credentials. And once we have checked for isValid, if there is already an existing token associated with a user, I can use the value of refresh token and set it equal to a refresh token variable that I have over here. So the way we do that, refresh token is equal to existing token. Again, if you want a console log, you can definitely do so, but I'm just telling you that we'll get back this object. So what I'm doing right now, instead of creating a new one, I'm just using the one that is in my database. I say existing token, refresh token, and then once we have this in place, we want to set up the cookies. So we don't need to check for user agent or IP or even create a token because we already have the existing token. So now we just want to repeat these steps where we want to attach cookies to a response. We want to send back the user, the token user, correct? And then we want to return. Why? Well, because we don't want JavaScript to keep on reading. So if we have this condition and if we don't return from the function, we'll still keep on reading this code. And that's not what we want. So let's repeat the same steps. We're going to attach cookie to response. We'll send the JSON response. And then we'll also return, like I just said. We'll go with return. Let's save it. And keep in mind that this token user, we already create over here. And as far as the refresh token, well, it's just line above, correct? So what I want to do right now is go back here. I'll remove my existing tokens one by one. So let's go over here, the same here. And now let's try to log in with John twice. And you'll see that we only have one token. So let's go back to the Postman, login user. We log in. I should get back my 2 cookies. Awesome. And if I take a look at my database, I will have my 1 token. But the next time John logs in, we'll use the same token. So let me go back here. Again, we send it. Everything is correct. And in my database, I have only 1. And then if I'm going to go manually, and if I'll say here, is valid is equal to false, you'll notice how John won't be able to log in. So if I'll say here false, and we'll update, and then again, if we'll try it out in a Postman I send, I'm going to get back invalid credentials. And that's exactly what we wanted to set up. Beautiful. And once we have the check for existing token in place, next I want to focus on authentication middleware, because we need to understand that at the moment we are checking for the token, correct? But the problem is that when we're setting up the cookies, we have access token and refresh token. So it's not going to work. And also, as a quick side note, in between the videos, I did change is valid to true, just so I can keep testing with John, but it's not going to make any difference whether you have one or the other. The idea is that if in the Postman you'll try to access show current user, so let me copy this one here, and then I'll move it to the auth workflow. And actually, I should have probably set up a new one, a new folder here. So let me quickly add that. So add folder, I'm going to go with user, and then let's just drag this guy over here, place it, and then let's test it out quickly. So we have get user, and I'm just going to rename it. I'll say user here. So let's send that one, and authentication invalid. Again, why is that happening? Well, simply because in our middleware currently, we're checking for 1 cookie. Basically, we're looking for a token, and we have 2. And before we continue, you know what? Where we have is token valid, I'm going to remove the object, because I think it's just going to bring extra confusion. So let me remove it here. Please do that as well. Please pay attention to this, because otherwise you'll have to chase some silly bugs. So let's save it here. We're just looking for 1 parameter. It's not going to be an object. This is the case where I went overboard. I'm happy to admit that. And then let's go to authentication, and let's start from the scratch. So here's what I want to do. I want to remove these lines of code. I'll leave try and catch, just so we don't have to retype this one, but just remove these things. So try is going to be completely empty. We have the catch, and we throw the error. And before we go any further, here's what we need to do. We need to grab both tokens out of it, correct? We go with a refresh token, and we also want to have the access token. Access token, correct? Now where both of them are sitting in rec, and we need to go with signed and cookies. That's the place. Now, once I get both of them, before we go any further, we want to check the access token first. Why? Because that one will have the shorter expiration. And if it's there, then awesome. Then we just pass on the user to a request. So rec user is going to be equal to a payload user, just like we did. And then we'll have to return and invoke next. So this is coming up. So in the try block, here's what I want you to do. Go with if, and then access token. If it exists, then we'll go with const payload, and then that is equal to is token valid. Again, make sure that you also remove that object in the parameters. Otherwise, you'll get bugs. And we'll pass here the access token. And then we'll set it equal to rec user is equal to a payload user. And here's the big gotcha again. Since we have the condition, if we are not returning, JavaScript will just continue reading the code, correct? And therefore we need to go to return. And then remember, we want to pass it on to the next middleware as well, right? So we're going to go here, return, and then next. Now, I can tell you right away that we will fail right now. Why? Well, simply because if I take a look at my JWT, notice this max age. What is it? It's 1 second. But since I want to showcase what kind of response we're going to get if the access token is not valid, since we are not checking here for the refresh one, I'll try to send the request anyway. So we're checking for the access token. And then first, I want to log in one more time. So let me do that. Get back both. And then in show current user, if I try to send it, notice how we are going to be pending. So basically, we have the if condition. We pass because access token is not there since it expires effectively in 1 second. And then we're just sitting here. This is where we're at. So we still need to check here for that refresh token. But if I go here to JWT and actually add a max age that doesn't expire right away, so not 1 second, I'm going to go with 1 minute and then I'll multiply this by, 15. So let me go back. Now you do need to log in one more time. That's kind of crucial in this case. So let's go here, login user, still log in. Now the expiration is, of course, longer. And then if we go to a show current user, there you go. Now we have the John. So now our next step is to set up the functionality where not only we check for the access token, but I also want to take a look at the refresh one. Since this one has shorter expiration, but the refresh one is going to be the one that has, again, 1 day, 30 days, or something along those lines. And using the refresh token, we can again attach both cookies to the response. And once we have the check for the access token, now let's do the same thing with a refresh token. And if we are successful, set up back both cookies. Now, what am I talking about? Well, if I go back to JWT, and if I remove, and if we go back to that 1 second, here in authentication middleware, first I'm just going to log. We are here. Again, we'll have to log in one more time because we have currently the access token with longer expiration. And now if I go to current user, notice we are pending, and I can clearly see that we are over here. And what we also need to keep in mind that since this one has expired, we need to set that cookie up. So even if we're successful checking for refresh token and all that, and we can add the user, I still want to send back both of those cookies. And this is something that we talked about in a previous project, where I said that there's multiple ways how we can set up this attach cookies. And remember, one of the options I showed you was the one where effectively we got the response back, and then we send the response from this function. Effectively, we send back the response with all the data. Now, I also mentioned that the reason why we're just attaching the cookies to the response is simply because later, as we're progressing, we're not going to be able to do that. And this is the reason why. We need to understand that in this authenticate user, I still want to pass on to the next middleware, correct? I still want to pass on to my controller. So it's not like I'm sending a request, it goes to my middleware, and then I just send back the tokens, correct? I send back the cookies. I mean, I want to have those cookies on the response, but I also want to provide the resource that the user is looking for. So hopefully that makes sense. So now let me close the sidebar here. And if the access token is not there, here's what we want to do. Well, first, I guess let's remove those console logs. We'll say const payload is equal to is token, and then valid. We go with refresh token in this case. And now I want to check for that existing token. So not only want to get the payload, but I want to get that existing token. I want to check whether it exists and also whether isValid is true. And the way we do that, we just go with const existing token. And I'll pass in both. I'll pass in the user as well as the refresh token. And we look for it with await. Then we need to get the token model. So const token is equal to require. And then let's hop over to the models. We're looking for the token in this case. We'll go with token, then dot. And then we're looking for one. So find one. And inside of the object, like I said, let's pass both. Let's pass in user, which is going to be in the payload, then dot user, and then user ID. Remember, that's how we are setting it up. And the same thing is going to be here where refresh token is equal to payload, and then the refresh token. Now, how do I know that those things are there? Well, remember, when we were setting up the refresh token, what were the two values that we passed in? We passed in not only the user, but we also passed in the refresh token. So I know that on that payload object, both of them are there, and that's why I can access them. So I'm looking for the existing token, and then I want to do another check. I say if there is no existing token, or I'm going to go over here and I'll say if the isValid is false. So if existing token, and here again, I'm going to use that optional chaining, where essentially I'm going to say if it exists, then I also want to check for isValid, because it's going to be hard to check for isValid if this one doesn't exist. So here we're checking, hey, does token exist? If it does exist, what is the value of isValid? And if either of them are false, then we do the same thing. We throw an error. Now, if we are successful, then remember, not only I want to pass on the user, so I'm going to go with rec.user and payload user, and not only we want to invoke next, but what we also want to do is attach those cookies. So we'll have to import that function. We're going to go here, const, and I believe it was attach cookies, and you know what, I think it's going to be faster if I do it this way, where I have all of these imports here. Back in authentication middleware, I'm just going to copy and paste or move these ones. So I'm looking for this function, and we just need to pass in the values. So we're going to go here with attach cookies to response, and we want to pass in three things. We want to pass in the response. User will be equal to my payload user, to my object there, because again, it's the same thing, what we set up in the JWT at the end of the day anyway. And then a refresh token will be equal to existing token. And then we're looking for the refresh token. So we save all of these things, and I think we can try it out. So let's navigate back to the Postman. Again, let's log in. Remember, we have that short access token. I believe it was like 1 second or something along those lines. We send it here. Yep, we're successful. Get back both cookies. Okay, awesome. And now if I go to a current user, what you'll notice is the fact that not only I'm successful, but I get back both. I have refresh token as well as the access token. So effectively what that means is that we have that refresh token functionality where we have the short access token that is pretty much set up for user so he or she can do all the necessary things in our application. But there's also this refresh token, which has way longer expiration date. And also, every time there is no access token, it has expired. If the refresh token is present, we still generate both cookies. Okay, looks like we're pretty much done with the functionality. So once we successfully can refactor the auth middleware for the access token and refresh token, we're really left with the logout functionality. And we already have a very, very, very nice blueprint already in the auth controller, where basically what we're looking for is simply to remove the cookie. That's it. That's all we have to do. Now, of course, in our case, there's two things. First, we have two cookies, correct? So we have refresh token as well as the access token. Now, the second thing, we also have the token in the database. And actually, it kind of makes sense if we remove the token. So what am I talking about? Well, remember, when we log in, and let me just scroll up, just so I can showcase that, we also create that token, correct? We go here, we check if it exists, then good. If not, then we create a new one. A better approach if we log out is also actually just to remove it. So instead of just keeping it in the database, we'll remove the token as well. Now, how is that going to look like? Well, we do need to attach user, correct? So let me go back to a routes just to showcase that. So I'm going to go to one of the routes because I'll copy that. And I think I'm going to go to order routes. Remember, we have authenticate user middleware. So in order to access the token and then remove it, I will need to get that user. So even though at the moment, if you're checking the auth routes, you'll probably notice that logout is a get route and it is a public because this is what we had in a previous project. Now we'll change that one around. So in order to speed this up, I'm going to go to order routes. I'll take both of them. And then in the auth routes, here's what I want to do. I want to copy and paste. And then I want to change some things around where I'm not going to use authorized permission. So pretty much I'm just looking for authenticate user. And again, this was just so I don't have to do that much typing. And then when it comes to a logout, this is very, very important. Or change this to a delete. Now, it's not going to make much of a difference in a Postman. Remember, in Postman, we can quickly change that. But in my front end, I'm calling the delete. And I know I've said this already a million different times, but keep in mind that even though the URL path might be the same, if it's a different method, then you'll just be struggling to get that value. So in here, I want to change this back to delete instead of get what it was before. And also what I want to do, I want to attach this authenticate user because I will use that in logout. So let me add a comma. I'm going to go with authenticate user. We'll save it here. And then what we're looking for is the auth controller. And then first thing we want to do in a logout is actually remove that token. Now, how do we do that? Well, we go here with await. And then we're looking for token. Then more specifically, I want to get find one and delete. And I'm not sure why, but it always gives this find by ID. And honestly, it's pretty easy to make that mistake where we'll be looking for a user. And if you use find by ID, you'll get the bug. So let's go here with find one and delete. That's very important. And then we want to set up the user. And I'm going to set that user equal to rec user and then user ID. Remember, that's what we are attaching in our middleware, correct? And once we're done with this, we simply want to remove both cookies. So in this case, we have two. We have access token and we have refresh token, correct? So let's just add that here. I'm going to go with access token. And then the second thing is that refresh one. So let me select this whole thing, copy and paste, and I'm just going to keep it as a logout. Again, that part is really irrelevant. We're going to go here with refresh and then token. Now for both of them, I'll right away remove that 1 second. There's really no point of adding that. So in this case, we have just take that now and we just remove it. And also, this is kind of useless for the front end, but this gives us a very good idea in the Postman. So therefore, I'll just leave that message. So let me save it, and then we're going to navigate back to the Postman. I want to copy the login user. Again, it doesn't really matter which one you copy, but I do want to use most of the path. So I'm just going to go here and I'll say duplicate. Then what I want to do is rename, and we're going to go here with logout. And let's also say user. Now, let's right away change the method. We'll say over here, by the way, I'm still in login, my bad. So let me go to a logout one. Let's change this one to delete. That's extremely, extremely important. We also want to change this one to a logout. And then let's try sending that. So I'll send it. And it says here, authentication invalid. So let me log in. First, I'm going to go with John. I'm going to log in. I'm going to check whether I have actually logged in. Yep, looks about right. And then the next thing that I want to do is go to a logout user. And let me send it one more time. So I'll send it here, and I can see that I have successfully logged out. And once we have everything in a postman, now I'll just minimize this one. And then we're looking for the front end. So let me navigate there. And you know what? For the last time, I'm just going to remove everything manually. So you can see everything in action, basically all the steps. So let me remove the refresh one, and we'll refresh. And now let's go with login. And then again, we're looking for John in this case. And we're looking for that password. And then let's log in. We get back both of them, correct? So we have the refresh one as well as the access token one. And then if I want to log out, check it out. I remove both cookies. And if you take a look at your database, what you'll also notice is the fact that there's going to be no token associated with that user. And lastly, let me just add quickly, when we're creating the JWTs, like I said, in this case, I'm going with a refresh token, and that is 1 day. But normally, that is going to be more. And when it comes to the access token, that's the one that is mostly that 1 day. So let me do it this way, where I'm going to copy and paste. I'm just going to say longer expiration, and then I'll multiply all of this by 30. So that's going to give me 30 days. And then I'll change this one around where it's not going to be 1 day. We'll say longer expiration. And let's copy and paste this. Again, this is definitely an option where you use that max age. In my case, what I'm going to do is to copy and paste expires, and we'll change it to a 1 day. And let's try one more time. So let's save this. Let's go to a front end, and I'll log in again as John. John over here, and then the password. Once we set this up, check it out. So now we have expires for the refresh token, which looks like it is those 30 days or whatever. And then I have another one I have for the access token, which is only 1 day. And once we have all of this in place, now we can move on to a reset password functionality. Okay, congrats on completing the token functionality. Up next, I want to focus on forgot and a reset password. And this is going to be extremely similar to our verify email one. And therefore, I'm not going to spend time on showing it on the front end. Now, I will show you bits and pieces as we move along, but I don't want to spend a separate video on pretty much going through all the steps because, again, the setup is going to be extremely, extremely similar. And here are the things that I want you to do in this video. First, go to a user model and set up 2 more properties. One by the name of password token, which is going to be equal to a string. And the second one, password token expiration date. And yes, this is me again going with the long names just because I prefer them, and set it equal to a date. Then I want you to go to Auth controller and then create 2 controllers, forgot password and reset password. And then in the auth routes, set up 2 routes. Now again, the placement is irrelevant. I just want you to set them up as post routes. One is going to be forgot password, and the second one will be reset password. So do those things, pause the video, and then resume it once you are done. And first, what I want to do is go to my user. So let me find my user here. And like I said, we're looking for 2 properties here. We want to have a password token. So right after the verified and all that, I'm going to go with password token. that will be equal to a type string. So type and then string. And then what I want to do is set up password token expiration date. So let's go here. Let's say password token expiration and then date. Now that will be equal to a date. So type and then date. Then we want to navigate to a auth controller and let's just set up 2 dummy routes, meaning 2 controllers that will just send back some silly string. And the controllers we're looking for are following. So we want to go with forgot password and reset password. So const forgot password, and it's going to be equal to a sync rec and res, and then let's just send back the silly string. So I'm going to go here with res.send and we'll say forgot and then password. And the same thing we want to do with reset password. So let's select everything, copy and paste, and then let's just change these values around. I'm going to go here with reset, and the same will be over here. So reset password. Then we want to export them. So forgot password, copy, comma, and then reset password. And then in the routes, let's finally get them. So we're looking for auth routes. And first, we want to import forgot password and reset password. Like I said, the placement is really irrelevant. I just want you to make them as post routes. So copy, verify email, and then in here, let's do it this way, where I'll say reset password, and that will be equal to the controller. So reset password. And then I also want to do the same thing with forgot. So let me just type here forgot - password, and then we're looking for the forgot password controller as well. So forgot, and password. Let's save this, and now I want to test it out in the Postman. So let me find my Postman first, and in here, let's set up those 2 routes. And I'm going to do that in the auth one. So I guess let me just copy verify email here. So I'm going to copy that one. And in here, I'm looking for forgot password. I think that's going to be the first that we work on. It's still going to be a post, and we'll say forgot password. And then once we send it, we should get back the string. And now let's also duplicate this one as well. So for now, let's just rename it. First of all, let me make sure that I'm here in the copy one. And that is going to be reset password. So let me navigate to the front and then let's say reset. We'll do the same thing over here. Reset in the body. I mean, we have the tokens, all that. We'll remove that. Don't worry. For now, what I want you to do is send it, and we should see the reset password. And once you have this in place, then we can move on to the next step. Beautiful. And once we have this setup in place, now let's actually start working on the controller. And like I said, we're going to start with forgot password. And then eventually we'll implement a reset password. And when it comes to front end, we'll do it step by step, where eventually, yes, we will send an email from the forgot password. But for now, I just want to deal with the Postman. So I want to set up the functionality where we create that password token, where we set up the expiration, and then we'll send an email, just like we did with verify password. And as far as the front end, it's going to look something like this, where basically I'm going to log out. And once I've logged out, I'm going to go to login. But instead of typing in the values, let's imagine the scenario where I forgot my password. So here, I'm going to go for reset password. And in here, we're looking for only one thing, and that is the email. So again, first, we'll deal with everything using Postman. And then the scenario is the same, where user comes here, he or she types the email, and then we send the reset password link, and then we'll go from there. So let's start here with forgot password. And the first thing I want to check is the email. So in here, I'm going to go with const email, and that is equal to rec.body. So that's what we're going to be sending. And then if the email doesn't exist, what do? Well, remember, we had the bad request example, correct? So I'm just going to scroll up. I'm looking for register. Let me take this one. And then where I have the forgot password, I'll copy and paste. And I'm just going to say if the email does not exist. So basically, if the user is trying to send the request without the email, then we go with bad request. And in this case, what we're looking for is please provide valid email. And as far as the response, let me scroll down. We're going to go with res.status. Status, we're looking for status codes. Status, and then codes. We're going to go with OK in this case. And then let's just go with JSON. And this is what we're going to display on the front end. So I'm going to go here with message. And then please check your email for reset password link. And once I have this set up, first of all, I want to fix this. This should be okay. Now I want to navigate to the Postman and actually test it out. So let me go to forgot password. Let me take a look at the body. I'll remove it here. And then I think I'm going to work with John. So let me just fix this one around. Since I'm going to be looking for the user, let me send it. All right, so I have success, 200. But then if I start messing with this value, let's say if I just remove it and send it like so, I get back, please provide valid email. So our initial functionality works. And what's interesting about this setup, that regardless whether we will be able to find the user or not, we will send back the success message. And I'm going to talk about it at the very, very end, simply because I think it's just going to give you a better perspective. So once I have the email, if basically email is in the rec.body, here's what I want to do. I want to look for the user first. So let's set it up this way, where I'm going to go with const user is equal to await, then user, and we're going to go with find one. So we're looking for a user where email is what? Well, where email is equal to an email, correct? Then I want to set up the if condition. So if user exists, then we'll do some stuff. Then we will set up these things. Then we'll set up password token as well as expiration day. Because what we need to understand is when we're setting up the reset password, I don't want this to be forever. I may be giving the user 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or whatever. So I don't want to just give the user ability to reset the password for, 3 days. That's not a best approach. So therefore, there's going to be some expiration. But we only do that if the user exists, correct? So I look for a user here. And if the user exists, then I want to create both. I want to create that password token as well as expiration. So if user exists, let's go here with const. And we're looking for password and then token. Again, it's important that the name is the same because this is going to make it easier later. And again, we'll use the crypto. So we'll say crypto, and we should be already familiar with random bytes. And in this case, we'll pass in 70, and let's just go with 2 and then string. Now I'll pass in the hex. Let's save that one. So that is going to be that password token, which you can already guess that in order to reset the password, we'll have to double check, correct? Just like we work with verify. And then once we have this in place, eventually we will send the email. So we'll set up the origin and all that. So I'll say send email, but let's not worry about it right now. So let's just say send email and we will set up that functionality. So now the next thing is to come up with expiration. Now, if you want to come up with expiration above here where you have the password token, that's really up to you. But we're not going to be sending that expiration in the email. So in my case, I'm going to do that below, where essentially I want to come up with 10 minutes in milliseconds. How's that going to look like? Well, I can go with 10 minutes. And that will be equal to 1,000. So that's 1 second. Then multiply by 60. That is 1 minute. And then we multiply that by 10. So this gives me the time in the milliseconds. And now let's set up the password expiration date. Now, let's remember that it was a date, correct? And what was the actual property name? Well, it was password, token, expiration, and then date. Now, this will be equal to a new date. And then what we want to pass here is date dot now. So invoke it. And then again, let's go with plus. And we're looking for 10 minutes. And once I have both of them in place, what do you think we're going to do? Well, we're going to update the user, correct? And how are we going to do that? Well, we can either go with await user update 1, where email is equal to email, or since you already have the access to the user, you can also go with user, and then that's why we use the same name, where we go with password token is equal to a password token, and then copy and paste. And I also have the same thing here. So this is going to be expiration date is equal to password token and then expiration date. And once we set both of these values, then what we want to do is save. So we want to go here with user.save and let's invoke it. Now let's also stick await in front of it. Let's save this one. And then, like I said, regardless whether the user exists or not, I want to send that success message. Why? Well, because I don't want the possible attacker to be snooping around, to be like, hey, let me try to send this email and see what the response is that the user does not exist. Because that way the attacker can know what emails I have in my database. In this case, I'm just like, yeah, check your email. If you're the one who is trying to reset the password, you'll be fine. If not, this at least will throw you off a little bit. Hopefully that makes sense. And now let's go to a postman. And what we're looking for here is the forgot password. And then let's just send that. Yep, we still have please check your email for reset password link. And then if I check my database, notice I have here password token as well as the password token expiration, correct? Now, if again, possible attacker goes with David as an example, he or she will get back the same thing. So they will know whether I have the user with the email of David. Hopefully that makes sense. And now we can proceed to start sending emails with our link. Beautiful. And once we have the initial functionality in place, basically, once we're able to add both properties, the password token as well as the password token expiration, now our next step is going to be sending that email, which is going to be extremely similar to verify email. And my apologies if I keep repeating that, but I want you to aware that there's going to be nothing unique that we do. The only difference is going to be that we will set up another function in the utils. At the end of the day, that's the only difference that we are going to do in this functionality as far as sending emails. And I want to go back. I want to take a look at my node mailer config. So this is going to be for the Ethereal. Make sure that you use those values if you need to log in. And then remember, first we set up send verification email. And what we were looking for there? Well, send email functionality, correct? So in my case, I'll retype everything from the scratch because I really believe that if we do that together, that is going to be more useful for you. But if you kind of want to save the time, you can just copy and paste because you'll see that we're just changing some values around here. And before we go any further, this is the first thing that I want to do, where I want to go to a index and then I'll copy and paste. And then what I'm looking for is this another function. That's what I want to get here. So the name is send, and then reset password, and then email. Now that is coming from where? The file name is send, and then verification and all that. So let me get my suggestions. So send, reset, password, email. We also want to add it over here. So let's go with send, and we're looking for reset, password, email. Then we want to go back to the auth controller. And not only I'm looking for the first one, but I want the second one. So that's something we need to start off with. That was the whole point why we set up the send email separately. Then let's scroll down. So we have verification email, we have the logins, logouts, and all that. And remember, if the user exists, basically, in the forgot password, we have this send email. So let me close the sidebar now. And then let's call await. And we're going to go with send, reset, password, email. And as far as what we want to pass in, just like with our verify email, we're going to be looking for 4 things. First, name, which is going to be where? It's going to be in the user.name. Then comma, I want to go with email. Now, where's the value? Well, it's in user and email, correct? Then I want to send the token. So go here with token, and I'm looking for this guy. I'm looking for the password token. So let's set it up over here as password token. And the last thing is the origin. Now, I'm not going to repeat why we need the origin. Just remember that that is going to point to our front end. And what is my origin? Well, either you can set it up in .env if you want. But in my case, I'm just going to scroll up where I have the verify email. And let me just find the origin. So verify email, that's the one. But before I'm sending here, it is this one, correct? So just so we can save a little bit of time, let me scroll down. And then where we have the send email. Before that, I'll set up my origin. And this is also something that we're going to pass in. Pretty much the setup is exactly the same. The only difference is what we're going to do in the send, reset, password email. And effectively, it's just what text we're going to provide over there. So now let's navigate back there. Let's go to our send, reset, password email here. First, what we want to do is grab our email, the send email functionality. How do we do that? Well, we go with const send email. And that is coming from require. And then it's in the same folder. So it's right here. Now, once we have that one in place, let's come up with the actual function. So send and then reset, password email. It's going to be a sync function. And in here, we're looking for 4 things, correct? So we passed in name, email, token, and origin. Now, before I forget, let me actually go with module, then exports, and that is equal to send, and you get the gist. So send and then reset password email. Now, as far as the function body, and as before function body, let's just grab those things. So we're looking for name, email, then token, and also origin. So we grab those things, and then first what we want to do is to come up with reset URL. And just like with verification one, again, it's going to go to our front end, basically our origin, and then the path will be a little bit different, where we're not looking for user and then verify email. In this case, on a front end, there is a route for user and then reset password. And just like in here, where we use the query string parameters, we're going to do that in the send reset password as well. So again, the idea is exactly the same. So let's go back and let's just construct that. So I'm going to go with const reset and then URL. That's how I'm going to call it in this case. Now I will set it up as a template string because I want to pass some things in here. And then I'll try not to make the mistake like I did last time, where remember I passed in the wrong URL. So let me just double check. So reset hyphen and then password. Then we want to go with question mark. So I'm saying here, yeah, I'll be passing in the query string parameters and I'll set equal token to a token. So let me access it here. Token is equal to token and email is equal to an email. So let's say here email, and that is equal to an email. So let's access both of these things. So now we have the link back to our front end, which is pretty cool if you ask me. Then we want to set up that message. So let's go here with message, and that is equal again to a template string. I'll set up here the paragraph. In that paragraph, yes, there's going to be that link. So that stays the same. And as far as the text, I'm going to go with please reset password by clicking on the following link. And then the link will have the href that is equal to this. And inside of the link, I'm going to type reset password. So just bear with me, please reset password by clicking on the following link. And then let's set up right away our href. So let's set it up over here. Since we're using template string, I can nicely just grab my reset URL, correct? And then let's close the tag, the link tag I'm talking about. And then as far as the text, let's just say reset, and password. Let's save. That's going to be my message. And again, as far as formatting, I'm just going to move that link on the new line because I think it's going to be easier for you to read. And then what we want to return, well, we want to go with return and send an email. So now we want to send that email. And what is the send email looking for? It's going to be looking for to property, which is going to be equal to an email. Then we also want to set up some kind of subject, correct? And then there's also going to be an HTML. And in there, we'll just pass in the name. So that is going to be the user's name. And then lastly, there's also going to be a message. So let's start here with to. That's equal to an email. Then we want to go with subject. That subject will be equal to a reset and then password. And lastly, we want to set up the HTML. So HTML property. And in this case, I'm going to go with template literals. Let's right away go with heading 4. Let's close it. Let's start by greeting the user. Let's say here, hello. And then we're looking for our vegan food truck, meaning our user. So that's going to be our name. And then again, for the formatting purposes, I'm just going to move this to a next line. And we're going to go with message. We send it, and this is going to be the case where we'll test pretty much everything in real time. So now what I want you to do is go back to your front end and then try to go for the user that you have. So in my case, I have my John. So let me try this one out. So john@gmail.com. And let's see whether everything works. So I'm going to go here. I'll click. And again, regardless whether the user is there or not, we'll get back this one. And then in my ethereal, if I refresh, yep, I have the john@gmail.com. And now let me see whether I made any silly bugs. Because if you click here on reset password, you should navigate to a front end. And now you just want to pass in that new password value. And then remember, as far as the front end, yes, there's a functionality in my front end code that grabs these values, the email as well as the token, and passes it along with this password. So in this case, it's not like with verify, where we send it right away the moment we navigate to the page. Now I'm actually waiting for that new password. So in here, yes, these things are important, but we're also waiting for that password. And that's what we're going to work on next. Nice. And once we can successfully send the reset password link, now let's work on reset password functionality. So first, we want to go to a reset password controller. And here, like I said, at the end of the very last video, we're going to be looking for three things: the token, the email, as well as the password. So these are the three things that we're looking for. And all of them are going to be coming from where? They're going to be coming from rec.body. So in the Postman, you would just manually add that. And then as far as the front end, like I said, there is a logic that grabs these values from the query string and then adds the password one once the user fills out the field and clicks on new password. And just so we have a little bit better functionality, I'll also check for three values. So I'll check whether the user has provided them. And therefore I'll scroll up, I'll take email exists with that bad request, and then copy and paste. And in here I'll check for all three of them. I'll say if no token or if no email, and hopefully you get the gist, if no password. So if one of them is missing, then what do we want to do? We want to throw a bad request, and I'll say please provide all values. And once we have this in place, then we want to get the user whose email matches this one. How do we do that? Well, we go with const user is equal to await, then user, we're going to go with find one, and we'll pass in the email. I'll say here, get me the user whose email matches this value. And again, this is going to be that thing where we won't showcase the possible attacker if the email does not exist. So basically, I will still send the 200 even if the user does not exist with this email. Why? Well, because I don't want to showcase which emails are in my database. So we'll start here with if user. If that exists, then we'll start working on a functionality. And the first thing we want to do is get the current date. So we're going to go here with const current date because I want to check the expiration. I'll say current date, that is equal to a new date. So that's the first thing. Then the second, I want to check whether the user password token is equal to a token that I'm getting over here, as well as if the expiration date, the one that we just set up here with new date now and then plus 10 minutes, is bigger than the current date. So that's going to be my if condition, where I'm going to say if, and first I'm going to go with user and then password token, if that is equal to a token that I'm getting here. And so the second condition is going to be is user password token expiration date is bigger than the current date. If that is the case, awesome. And if this condition is met, then we'll do more stuff. Now, what is that more stuff? Well, then I want to go with user password is equal to the password that I'm getting. So that is going to be that new password. And I want to set back the user password token to null, as well as the expiration. So in here, let's go with user and then password token. So that's going to be equal to a null. And the same will be with a token expiration date. So we're looking for token expiration date. And we'll set that one to a null as well. Lastly, what do we want to do? We want to go here with await user and then .save. We invoke it. And then let's navigate to a front end. And let's keep something in mind where for sure the expiration in my case is going to be done. Where basically it took me already probably 20 minutes to record these videos. So I shouldn't be successful. And therefore it's really cool that we can test that out. So I'm going to go with my new password, which basically I'm going to go with new and then secret. Let's try doing that. We have success, redirecting to a page and all that. But if I'll try to go with John and then my new password, which is going to be the new secret, I'm actually not going to be successful. I'll have invalid credentials. So I'll have to do the whole thing one more time. Why? Well, because the link that I got has already expired. So let me try one more time here, where I'm going to go with the reset password. Again, I'm looking for john@gmail.com. And then let's try it out. We send an email. It's going to take a little bit. And then once we get there, we need to go to Ethereal, I believe. And then in the messages, we should have another one. Yep, we have reset password. We navigate back. And now let me go again with that new and then secret. And even though I cannot show you the password value, you can clearly see that it is longer than the secret. So let's go here. Again, we have success. We are redirecting to a login page. And now if I test it out, then I'm going to go with John Gmail and then new and then secret. And in this case, I am successful. So I can successfully log in as John. Wonderful. We're pretty much done with this project. The last thing that I want to showcase in this case is how we can hash the password token. So at the moment, we're just creating a token, but there's also an option to hash it, which of course is more secure. And we'll do that using the crypto library. And effectively, we'll just have to use a few more functions that it provides. And I do want to do that though in the utils. I think that is going to make a little bit more sense, where in the utils I'll create a new one. And let's just call this create hash. We'll go with JS. And first what I'm looking for is crypto. So let me close the sidebar. Looking for crypto. And that is going to come from require. And then crypto library, which we don't have to install. A little bit of repetition, but hopefully that is clear. Then we're going to go with const. And the function name will be hash string. And then in this hash string, eventually we'll pass in the token. So that's going to be our string. And as far as return, we're just going to go with crypto. Then we need to come up with an algorithm. So we're going to go with create hash. And as a side note, hashing is one-way street like we talk about it. So once you hash something, you can only compare it with a hashed value. That's it. There's no way to access the original. And here I'm going to go with MD5. Then we want to go with update. This is where we pass in the string. And then lastly, I'm just going to go with hex. So we're going to go with digest and hex. We set up the function. Now we want to export that. So module.exports. And then that is equal to a hash string. Okay. Then let's do the same thing in the index.js. In the utils, I want to get my create hash. So that's the file name. Now I'm exporting the function of hash string, but I'm going to use the name of create hash. So in here in the index.js, let's look for it. Let's say require, and we're going for our create hash function. That's the file name. Then we want to create that hash. So let's export that. And then in the auth controller, what do we need to do? Well, first we need to grab it, correct? So let's go with create hash. And then we want to invoke it in two places. First, remember where we're setting up our forgot password. In this case, we're saving in a database the same token that we just created, the password token. But here's what I want to do. I want to send the password token, so the one that we just create with random bytes, with my email. So that stays the same, but as far as my database, I actually want to use the create hash here. So where I'm saving that token in that database, that's where actually it's going to be saved as a hash. So that's the first step. Now the second step, when we're comparing, now we need to understand that token comes in as those random bytes, but in the database, I already hashed it, correct? And then what do? Well, we just go with create hash, and then we pass in a token. Like I said, we cannot unhash this anymore. That's it. What we can only do is compare. So I'll hash this one, and I compare to this one. Let's save this one, and let's go back to our front end again. I have a million different applications here open, a million different tabs. So let me close a few of them. And I don't know, I think I'm going to start by pretty much, again, logging in, then reset the password. Let's try with John. So I'm going to go with Gmail here, then get the link. I should be able to log in the Ethereal. I'll see another one. Yep, that's the one. Go here. Yep. Let's go with back to secret. So I had a new secret. Now I'm going back to the secret. I have success. Let's see whether everything works. And now I'm going to go with john@gmail.com. And then let me test it out with my password. So I'm going to go back to the secret one. And yep, I am successful. And this way, when we're storing that password token, it is actually hashed, which is more secure. That should do it for the project. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it. And I hope to see you in the next one.